Shadow Slave, Error by author Luukkk. Chapter 93-100. At the same time, the finale of the movie began with the title, The Scourge of the Forgotten Shore. It showed Neffys returning from her long journey and marching toward the bright castle. Castor, however, was visibly upset as he watched. The writers had decided to portray him and Neffys as having a romantic relationship, and the moment he realized it, his expression darkened. He glanced at Neffys, who looked back with complete indifference. Sunny was staring at him too, wearing a mocking smile as he shook his head in silent amusement, which only made Castor more irritated. "Just you wait. My time has not come yet." "Oh, Castor, I didn't know you were such a loverboy." "Ah, that's so romantic." Kido giggled while Gemma pressed his lips together, clearly fighting the urge to laugh. Castor clenched his fists and glanced around, and what he saw was not something he liked at all. "Oh no. Hey, Neffys. How could you abandon him? Don't you know how hurt he was after you rejected him? Now he's listening to sad music. He's even forcing Kai to sing it while he walks alone in the dark." Aiko shouted at Neffys's group with righteous indignation. "Oh, no, 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 wait. Castor's eyes widened. Neffys blinked, then looked down bleakly, her ears turning red with embarrassment while Aiko burst into laughter, slapping her knees. Even Rain and Effie were doubled over laughing, and Cassie couldn't stop a soft giggle from escaping. "You broke his heart. Do you understand what?" Castor reacted instantly, grabbing Aiko and covering her mouth to stop any more nonsense from spilling out as she squirmed helplessly in his grip. "Fuck," he thought as several spectators glanced at him with pity. A few guys even tapped their chests, giving him pained, sympathetic nods of encouragement. Few minutes later, everyone calmed down, but things did not go as anyone expected in movie. The radiant heroine, Neffys, was preparing to challenge the cruel tyrant, yet the real Gunlog sitting in the theater did not look anything like the monstrous villain the movie portrayed. He sat among his clan members like a homeless bum crushed under debt from gambling alcohol addiction. The audience stared in confusion, trying to reconcile the terrifying tyrant on the screen with the pitiful figure beside them. The difference was shocking. "What? I'm just chilling." Gunlog frowned, not understanding the stares as he sipped his cocktail. "Oi, golden moron, it's winter, not summer," Kido said, genuinely baffled by how he was dressed. "Whatever, just enjoy the movie, dude." Gunlog yawned, turning his attention back to the screen as the scene continued. However, the atmosphere shifted drastically, in a way no one expected. Well, no one except the few who actually knew the details of what really happened. Luna stepped forward in the movie, her voice trembling as she begged everyone to stop the senseless bloodshed. She pleaded for them to find common ground, to unite as humans instead of destroying each other, to rise together and challenge the Crimson Spire instead of letting hatred control them. But they did not listen. Instead, they mocked Luna and called her naive and soft. The audience in the theater glanced at her with sympathy and admiration, breaking into applause. Many had tears in their eyes as Luna desperately tried to stop the fighting. Then someone stepped forward. It was a young man with blazing red hair and crimson eyes burning with cold intensity. He laughed boldly as he challenged the Bright Lord. The audience erupted in cheers the moment he appeared. "Ah, Lord Medici. It's him, look at him." For the spell's sake, the movie does not do him justice. He is so much more handsome in real life. Medici tried to remain cold and expressionless as he watched, pretending he was indifferent to the flood of praise. His mouth, however, twitched as he struggled not to let it curl into a smile. This did not go unnoticed. Jet, Luna, Eamon and Roderick stared at him in blank disbelief. "I do not understand all this hype. Why is this idiot so loved?" Jet muttered, shaking her head. "Well, he is cool, so it makes sense," Roderick said with an easy smile. Luna and Eamon did not offer any comment. Their shoulders trembled as their expressions cracked, and then they burst into laughter, pointing at Medici without mercy. Medici's expression soured instantly, and he snorted as his pride deflated. "We will see how you two look when your parts come up." The moment he said that, both Luna and Eamon froze, then leaned back in their seats with identical looks of pure dread, already cringing at the thought. Then the fight finally began. People held their breath as Medici shattered Gunlog's armor with Luna's crown giving him support. At the same time, Neffys and Luna were locked in a fierce clash. Eamon found himself disturbed by how accurate the portrayal was. It was not perfectly identical to how their battles had actually unfolded, but it was close enough to be unsettlingly familiar. Before the conflict on-screen could progress any further, deranged laughter echoed through the castle, followed by a violent tremor that shook the entire structure. A moment later, a majestic black ship fell from the sky and crashed through the ceiling, tearing through floor after floor like a colossal spear until it pierced straight down to the very bottom. At the same time, Haruz and Eamon were shown falling through the collapsing structure, fighting in midair. The entire theater went silent. Their faces shifted into expressions of disbelief and horror as Eamon defeated Haruz, shattered his spine, and hung him with his own chains. Rahahahaha. I'm the fucking blasphemer. The actor playing Eamon screamed in deranged glee as he plummeted downward, flailing dramatically. The audience collectively recoiled in their seats. What the hell, one spectator muttered, face draining of color. He's crazy, another whispered, deeply unsettled. Meanwhile, Haruz grimaced at the screen, shoulders stiff. He was staring directly at the actor portraying him, and the look on his face made it painfully clear he wished he weren't. That was painful and insane. Haruz muttered. Tell me about it, Eamon muttered, remembering exactly how chaotic everything had been. Then Haruz frowned, tilting his head with a curious squint. I don't think I was that dramatic. You were kind of like that, but then again, you enjoy theatrics. Eamon nodded, cackling as Haruz's on-screen self shrieked like a dying kettle. They made you into a pussy, kekek. Fuck off, bastard. Haruz snorted, leaning back with a dark scowl. Meanwhile, the audience assumed Eamon would fall to his death. However, a dark silhouette appeared on the screen, catching him at the last moment and pulling him to safety. Gasps filled the theater as Luna appeared, drenched in blood and covered in wounds, clutching Amon's limp body in her arms. Now the audience was completely lost. Eamon was supposed to be a joke, was he not? They had heard the rumors about the fearsome blasphemer, but the movie had never shown anything that matched that reputation. Gradually, everyone had simply assumed he was nothing more than a troublesome nuisance. But after watching him massacre countless enemies in mere seconds by dropping a ship onto the castle, they no longer knew what to believe. Haha, take that, fraud allegations. Eamon laughed, a deeply satisfied smile appearing on his face. My off-screen hockey is that strong, bitch. Then the scene shifted, showing Medici advancing with cold determination toward Tessie, who stood frozen in terror, unable to move. Medici beheaded him without hesitation. The screen showed him stepping over the corpse and walking toward the throne with rivers of blood flowing behind him, streaming down the steps like a crimson waterfall. Medici stared at the throne for a few seconds before sitting down, leaning back with arrogance while his subordinates clashed with Nephus's faction to protect him. The theater erupted in cheers again. The loudest screams came from the girls, who did not care in the slightest who was right or wrong. They only cared that Medici looked fucking hot. Then the final battle began. Sunless emerged from a shattered mirror while Nephis pulled herself up from the debris, her arms shooting upward with determination. At that moment, Luna stepped forward as well. The fight was so brutal and deranged that some audience members closed their eyes, disturbed by the pure, senseless chaos and the merciless way Luna fought, letting enemies pierce her body, slash her back, and wound her repeatedly just to land her own blows. Before the battle could progress further, Eamon appeared. He drove a rod straight through Nephus's body and then hurled several more at her, pinning her to the wall. At the same time, Sunless tried to ambush Eamon, aiming for his head, but something blurred in an instant, blocking the strike with incredible speed. Castor had joined the battle. Hell yeah, that's my boy. Shit, he's spreading his arms while running. He's doing it again, guys. Ha ha ha. Members of Amon's clan jumped from their seats, cheering wildly. Castor glanced at Sunny, grinning from ear to ear. Sunny avoided his gaze with a scoff, his expression sour from displeasure. See, that's what Eamon was doing on the Forgotten Shore, Rain. He's not a gentleman or someone to admire. Sunny said with a sigh, hoping his sister would finally understand that Eamon was just a sadistic bastard. Wow, that's so cool. Even while falling, he looked so, that's just so elegant. And Lady Luna saved him too. Do you see it, Sunny? That's so endearing. I would love to have a relationship that romantic someday. Rain said with a dreamy gaze as she stood up and clapped with a bright smile. What the fuck? After both Sunny and Neffys were defeated, Eamon approached Luna, who was lying on the ground. The audience gasped as he extended his arm toward her in a gesture meant to feed her. At first, they did not understand, but then realization dawned. Though, of course, it was false. Luna's flaw was not a hunger for flesh or anything of that sort. Even so, as disturbing as the scene was, the audience could not look away. When Eamon kissed her, their eyes shifted to Luna's belly, and most were convinced they knew who the father was. "Sunny, I told you. I was right. Of course Mr. Eamon is the father," Rain exclaimed with wide eyes. This time Sunny wasn't angry. He was thoughtful as a deep frown appeared on his face. He still couldn't believe that Luna was pregnant. He glanced at her and squinted, wondering when they had even found the time. The idea still baffled him. Luna noticed his stare and smiled gently, giving him a small nod. Sunny nodded back awkwardly and turned his eyes to the screen again. "Those guys are really something," Cassie said with a sigh. Effie noticed her friend's awkward expressions, stared at them in disbelief, then scoffed, shaking her head. "No, it's just you guys who are weird. They're a man and a woman. They love each other and spent a lot of time together. It's perfectly natural that they'd end up with a child. Who knows how many times they did it back on the forgotten shore. Is it really that normal?" Neffys asked, her tone flat but her cheeks faintly reddened. She sounded awkward even asking, and if she were honest, she wasn't used to matters like this. The changing star was usually expressionless and cold, but when it came to personal relationships, she was inexperienced and prone to blushing. "Listen here, princess. It is perfectly normal, like I said. While Eamon isn't the most handsome man in the world like Medici, he's drop-dead gorgeous, though," Effie said with a grin, glancing at Medici for a moment before biting her lower lip. Neffys nodded awkwardly. Medici was indeed handsome, but he was too aggressive and muscular for her taste. Meanwhile, Effie continued with a sigh. "Where was I? Oh, right. While he isn't as handsome as Medici, Castor, or Kai, Eamon has his own unique charm. To be honest, no one else has it, so he's pretty special. And, Luna's, is it strange that I feel some attraction toward a woman even though I'm straight?" she added, sounding a bit confused. Everyone stared at her blankly for a moment. Then Cassie cleared her throat and composed herself. "I think it's not as strange when it comes to Luna and Medici." "Why is that?" Rain asked curiously, while Sunny glared daggers at Effie. What the heck was she talking about when there was a child with them? "To be honest, even I feel a slight attraction when it comes to Luna. It's not simply because she's beautiful, but I think it's her attribute. I believe the same applies to Medici. Both have, respectively, their masculine and feminine sides greatly enhanced." Cassie answered thoughtfully. She couldn't exactly see their runes, but she had a faint sense of them, and from that, she was able to deduce it. At the same time, Amon's smile widened as he watched people slowly realize what was happening. Bingo, if he stepped forward and declared that he was the father, the Song clan would deny it with all their strength, and Luna wouldn't be able to confirm anything since she was bound to obey her mother. Not to mention, people would assume that Eamon was trying to take advantage of the situation, slander Luna, or ruin her reputation if he said anything. So Eamon remained silent, letting people realize it themselves, leaving the Song clan powerless to intervene. Of course, this wasn't enough on its own, but Eamon was meticulous with his plans. It was always better to lay the foundation before building the house. Few moments later, everyone's attention returned to the screen as Eamon released Luna and walked toward the shattered wall overlooking the entire dark city. He summoned a torch and shattered countless shards, absorbing them into himself. The audience looked on, bewildered, unsure what he intended to do. Yet no one dared speak as Amon's body began to transform, slowly replaced with writhing, insidious maggots. Half of his face became covered with the worms, curling and straightening, their forms forming strange, disturbing patterns resembling the clock. Then he hurled the torch forward, and a massive explosion bloomed, consuming everything and reducing the entire city to ashes. The theater remained silent, faces pale and horrified as a single sleeper had burned down an entire city. At the same time, Amon's body began to stabilize. Looking at the pillars of flame, he spread his arms with a smile, then bowed gracefully as if announcing the end of the performance before losing consciousness. Eamon remained silent as he watched the screen, his expression thoughtful and slightly disturbed. If he were not careful to maintain his mental state in the waking world, he could become a corrupted beast at any moment, whether years from now or tomorrow. Then the siege of the Crimson Spire began, a battle as chaotic and insane as the previous one. Medici's speech ignited the final battle of the Forgotten Shore, followed by a relentless clash between nightmare creatures and humans. Medici led the army, advancing steadily, while Nefis moved among the soldiers, healing them to reduce casualties. Luna supported the battlefield wherever she was needed, appearing suddenly to save those in peril. Kai appeared in the sky, taking on the Spire's messengers, and the audience watched with hope despite already knowing the outcome. Soon after, Harus joined with a massive, strange raven, fighting alongside them. Together, the three defeated the messengers and saved the army by tilting the net holding hundreds of avian beasts toward the nightmare creatures, crushing them under their combined weight. Medici reached the spire while Luna held back tides of abominations. Meanwhile, Castor rescued many sleepers, moving with impossible speed, while Gunlog laughed wildly as a storm erupted overhead, lightning tearing through clouds and rain pouring down. It became clear why Gunlog was called the Laughing Storm and Castor the Prince of Motion. Then the audience's shock peaked as the same black ship that had destroyed the castle appeared, manifesting atop a mountain of corpses from a rain of white sparks before plummeting down again. Gunlog led the sleepers from the rear camp toward the spire, battling monstrous sea creatures, then boosted the ship's speed, crashing it directly into the spire's entrance. In that moment, the audience understood why Amon's cohort was considered the most powerful, resourceful, versatile, and insane. Only someone truly unhinged could accomplish such a feat. After that, the movie lost its accuracy. In reality, Amon's cohort were the only ones who had faced the Crimson Terror, and they never spoke of what had truly happened. So the writers decided to create their own ending. In the film, Amon and his cohort sacrificed themselves to save everyone, realizing their past mistakes and fighting for what was right. They fought heroically, ultimately defeating the Crimson Terror and achieving redemption while staying behind as everyone escaped. The audience erupted in cheers. Stories of a journey toward redemption always resonated deeply. The other characters did not feel as realistic as Amon's cohort because they were too perfect, each fighting solely for their own convictions and ideologies, whereas Amon and his companions had flaws, conflict, and humanity in every choice they made. Amon's cohort had made countless mistakes on their journey. Gunlog had tried everything and eventually fell into the depths of despair, unable to find a way home and turned into a tyrant. Harus was consumed by regrets, his entire life feeling bleak and hollow. Castor was torn between loyalty and duty, unsure whether to stay with the changing star or take the risk to save everyone. Kido chose to side with Amon after seeing a glimmer of hope to return home with the love of her life. Kai was plagued by doubts and fears, which led to unfortunate incidents, but in the final battle he found the courage to do what was necessary. Despite being small and powerless, Aiko supported her friends on the battlefield, providing everything they needed to succeed and doing everything in her power to help. Amon, meanwhile, had started as a troublemaker, but he became the mastermind secretly pulling the strings to save everyone, even if his actions cost many lives because not every plan went as intended. It was these mistakes, conflicts, and struggles that made them feel real and deeply loved by the audience. Yet at the same time, people feared them, because they understood this wasn't just fiction. These were real individuals, sitting in the theater right now, capable of going to any lengths to achieve their goals. So, what do you guys think? Kai asked, smiling. Kai, my friend, Castor began, wiping a tear from his eye. This shit was magnificent. Kai sighed in relief as the others laughed as well. Of course, they hadn't taken the movie seriously. Even if their characters were inaccurate, sometimes turned into jokes or villains, they were just having fun, so they didn't care. What about you, Gunlog? Aiko asked, gently shaking his shoulder. But then she froze, her expression widening in horror. Guys, he blacked out. Yeah, oh, come on. Again. Fuck. Just leave him there. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Sue, when are we expecting the mini-boss? Aiko asked Luna cheerfully. Month and few weeks probably, I am not really sure. Luna smiled as she ate with the others. But is it supposed to be so big? Castor asked curiously, observing her belly with a narrowed eye. Well, maybe he is very healthy. Who knows? Luna chuckled, though she had to admit her belly was bigger than it was supposed to be. There is no need to worry about the size. Everything is going as it is supposed to and the timing is immaculate as well. Eamon spoke with a small smile as he sipped his juice. What does that mean? Both Castor and Aiko asked at the same time while Luna furrowed her brow in suspicion. Amon's mouth twitched, but he remained ambiguous, only shrugging and adjusting his monocle. Sometimes you have to trust destiny. Time will show us everything eventually. Luna clicked her tongue in annoyance but nodded. Now she really missed some of the hanged man's abilities. If she still had divinations, maybe she too would have known what he was talking about. Though it would not have been as accurate as Eamon because he used decryption to decipher the bizarre symbols in visions to figure out the exact details of what he was seeing. Haruz nodded, knowing that sometimes it was better to remain in the dark to witness a brighter future. But not everyone shared his wisdom. Kido groaned, leaning on Gemma's shoulder. Listen here, dimwit, that is not how you win a lady's heart. If you constantly annoy Luna, then she will leave you, and she wouldn't even be in the wrong, got it? Eamon glanced at her, contemplating the answer but inevitably choosing to leave things as they were. My plan will work. I have already seen it. A human farm, huh? That is interesting, indeed. But what I truly need is the Garden of Acceleration. If my theory is correct, then everything will work perfectly. But should I be taking a gamble on such a risk? If something goes wrong, then I am doomed. Luna and my son as well. But then again, I am quite a gambler, and I have the tools, knowledge, and skills to pull it off, so, there is a high chance of it working. Though Luna might kill me because of that. I will deal with it when the time comes. Mr. Jacob took a big debt, which means the Moirai is still developing. But hiring new workers still takes a lot of money. Which means we have to hurry as well. While Mr. Jacob is doing everything in his power to sustain the growth of the city, we cannot slack off, not this time. Eamon muttered with a thoughtful look, changing the subject quickly so no more questions would be asked. I do understand, but can't we? If we do this, the temple for Mr. Error will be built without any issues. Eamon interrupted Castor with a serious look. Deal. What should we do? Castor leaned forward, his eyes filled with anticipation. Guys, wait. Can't we discuss it first? Like, come on. I have a feeling that we are going to do something very stupid and dangerous. Kido frowned, not liking how Eamon was exploiting Castor's zealous behavior. Eamon tilted his head, glancing at her with a faint smile. It is nothing much, really. We are just going to challenge the second nightmare. What? Aiko jumped from her seat, her eyes wide with disbelief. Exactly what I said. We cannot waste any more time. We are ready, our cores are saturated, we adjusted to our awakened physique, and we sharpened our skills. Besides, we have resources and the most capable cohort in the entire history. So what is the problem, really? Eamon asked with a shrug. My problem is that I am agreeing with Kido. I smell death, she said, clenching her fists. The only thing you will be smelling is shit in toilets if you don't shut up. We are talking about the second nightmare, so keep your voice down. Haru sneered, glancing at Aiko in annoyance. Be it from finding reason or simply being scared of cleaning toilets as punishment, Aiko quickly sank back into her seat with a dissatisfied look. Eamon is right, the world is changing quickly, and we can't be left behind. Luna sighed. She was truly uncertain about this, but she decided to trust Eamon. He said he had seen a future where their son was sound and safe, and that was all that mattered. Still, it was not as if she had no other options. She could still marry the scion of the House of the Night and live peacefully, raising her son without any danger. But was that what she truly wanted? No, she wanted to be with Eamon. She wanted to raise her son with the man she loved. The man who was the boy's father, not some random bastard thrown at her to gain political advantage for the war that was about to come. So she was willing to take this risk. If she did not die, then she was 100% confident that she would protect her baby, but if she, no need to think about that. She would survive and her child would be safe. I am sorry, Evangelo. I know I am selfish but I just love him so much. I cannot allow us to be separated again. But do not worry, I will protect you, even if I have to die. I will make sure you live. She didn't know if she was a good mother or a terrible one for making such a decision. But she couldn't just let Eamon challenge the nightmare alone. She couldn't stay still while he faced danger. She knew, of course, that his cohort would be there, but, last time she checked, nightmares were unpredictable. Sunny ended up in the Colosseum, Effie in the temple, and Kai was burned on the stake. So who truly knew what would happen? Though, the same applied to her. She could also be in dire danger. But she was a sower, she could sacrifice her own life force and even the life force of others to make sure her child was safe. Are you okay? Eamon took her hand, looking at her calmly. Luna snapped out of her thoughts with a surprised look. She smiled softly and nodded her head, but her expression was still concerned. As for Eamon, he knew why she was so worried, and he could understand it. But he also knew how harsh this world truly was. The incident in Rain's school had solidified that idea even more. Both Eamon and Luna knew that the future was unpredictable. So what if the same incident happened to their child? What if a gate opened near where their boy was while they were away? What would happen? The answer was as simple as it was tragic. Their son would die. Eamon wasn't arrogant enough to think that he was capable of protecting everyone. So he decided to use a tested method. The tomb of Ariel was the answer to that problem. He would use this nightmare as fuel for his son's power. The child would be born in the nightmare, and when they survived it, he would become a master from the start. That would eliminate the risk of dying in the first nightmare and also the risk of death after being transported into the dream realm after the winter solstice. Who knew what the future hid? Maybe his son would survive the first nightmare, or maybe he would not. Maybe he would end up in a safe region, or maybe in a death zone like Eamon and Luna. That was why Eamon wasn't willing to take such a risk. So he was willing to bet on the second nightmare. It was the easiest way to gain strength, and if Eamon found his son quickly in the nightmare, then he would put the baby in the horizon's edge to keep him safe. With that, Evangelo would simply rest in his soul sea while Eamon fought. Then the nightmare would end, and Evangelo would become a master. There would be no risk of dying in the first nightmare that way. There would be no risk of the death zones as well. Their son would not need to sleep to enter the dream realm as a master either. He would be able to transport himself directly to his anchor if danger arose. He would be more resistant to the call of the nightmare. Not to mention, life would be more comfortable as a master, since he would not be forced to spend time in the dream realm. He could have a normal life that way. What Eamon needed to do was simply survive to make that future a reality. But he was also a little uncertain. With decryption, he was able to decipher the symbols of his vision, but he was still hesitant. What did crescent moon and carnage even mean? He had been unable to decipher those two, and that worried him. There was also the symbol of the error pathway, which was related to time. He was aware that the symbol was pointing at him, but there was a possibility that it was pointing at the actual river of time. He wasn't 100% certain. It sucks that I don't have any knowledge about this nightmare. I don't really know what will happen. It would have been so much better if it were 2 years later in the tomb of Ariel. I would have information, more resources, and more power. The lack of information is really driving me crazy. Well, I cannot get everything on easy mode. However, if I manage to pull this off, my son will be safe. Not just safe, if my theory is correct, he will be powerful enough too. Now that I think about it, why am I seeing two versions of the future? And why are both versions filled with death and mountains of corpses? Though the first one is more calm and silent. It is like a hunter that kills whatever breathes. A hunter that does not discriminate and does not care whether his prey is human or a beast. While the other version is filled with more chaos and bloodshed, with flames and bones. This is strange. Will my son be some kind of sadistic maniac? I don't know, now I am concerned. Eamon sighed, dejected because of his chaotic vision. Divination was not really omnipotent, after all. Now that he thought about it, he would have already digested seer, clown, and magician if he were from the fool's pathway. That was a bit funny, but right now, he needed to think about his own advancement. I should remember that I must be the antagonist in this nightmare, meaning I am the bad guy. Amon's lips curled up once again as he thought of that, his expression turning unsettling and filled with mischief as he glanced at the sun. How ironic. Shaking his head, he glanced at Luna, who still had a worried look, and kissed her hand. Don't worry, we will handle it. Luna nodded, her expression relaxing as she touched his cheek with one hand and his tie with the other, pulling him in and kissing him. You guys should really find a room, an unimpressed voice was heard from behind. Luna, remembering where she was, pushed Eamon back, quickly licking her lips and composing herself. And you should not stalk people, Medici. Luna grimaced, glaring at him, but then she leaned back, a soft smile appearing on her face. Or is it that you are jealous because... She paused, then both she and Eamon simultaneously said, that you've got no bitches. Medici remained motionless for a moment while Luna giggled softly and Eamon burst into laughter. Then he turned around, walked back, opened the window, and took a deep breath. Fook. After calming down, he coughed awkwardly while the entire restaurant watched him, stunned in disbelief. Ahem, though, Luna, what kind of girl says, you've got no bitches? It feels like you're saying that you're also bitch, hey. He grinned, poking at her shoulder with the stick. Not really. In this situation, Eamon is my bitch. Luna muttered, a bit confused by his question, while Eamon choked on his drink. Then he wiped his mouth and glanced at Medici. Where did you even find that stick? Or why are you carrying it? Medici blinked, looking at his stick and then back at Eamon and Luna, dumbfounded. Don't you idiots recognize it? This is Excalibur, fuckers, he said proudly, crossing his arms. Eamon and Luna froze, then got closer, observing the stick until their eyes started sparkling. This shape, this sharpness, hey, let me borrow that. Eamon said with a wide smile. Hey, I am a lady. At least let me touch it first. Luna glared at Eamon, pushing him back. Fall back, peasants. Medici took a step back with a fierce look. This sword can be wielded by only the person who is worthy. Wow. Eamon and Luna admired the shape of the stick while Medici swung it. Isn't that just a stick? Kido blurted out, dumbfounded. I think so, why are they acting like imbeciles over a stick? Aiko nodded, not understanding the situation. Why, what is this feeling? Castor said with wide eyes, his heart beating wildly as he looked at the stick. Is this true love? Dude, what the fuck? Haru's grimaced, shaking his shoulders while Kai sighed helplessly. Oh, by the way, Eamon. Where's Raven? Haru's asked curiously, remembering dirty-minded bird. I don't know. Eamon muttered while running with stick in his hand after stealing it from Medici, and as a result, he was chased. I think Raven has existential crisis, guys. Castor replied with hesitant tone, his expression conflicted. Huh, what do you mean? Medici and Eamon paused fighting while Luna snatched stick secretly, whispering to baby in her belly. Evangelo, this will become your aspect legacy. Meanwhile Castor's expression grew more hesitant and awkward. Well, ... 2 days ago. Hey, Lil Raven, what's up? Castor appeared out of nowhere in the woods, looking at Raven, who was staring ahead with bloodshot eyes. Yo, check this out. Raven whispered, his voice trembling from terror, his 4 bizarre eyes burning with hatred, a sense of doom, and helplessness. Castor frowned, then looked up, only for his frown to deepen and his expression to turn completely baffled. Isn't that Scarecrow? Listen, Raven, I think. Shush. Raven slapped his wing over his lips, screeching at Castor from desperation. Shit, he noticed us. Dude, what do you mean? It's just. But alas, Raven was not listening. He was having a panic attack. Hey, what's your name? Answer me. Raven screeched at Scarecrow, yet it did not move, remaining motionless. Raven scratched the rock he was standing on with his talons in anger. See, he's playing mind games. He's playing with us. When was the last time you slept? Castor asked, now growing more concerned. I don't know. Maybe 3 or 4 days ago. But that doesn't matter. Listen, Speedster, I've been watching that thing all this time and I can say, without any errors, that it's advancing towards the city. Trust me, I know what I'm saying. Castor's expression darkened, holding his face with a tired look, not wanting to handle this situation. Okay, I think I know what to do. Oh, what's that? Raven asked, hopeful. We retreat for now and discuss how to handle this situation. Listen, we need to rest. We cannot fight that thing if we're barely standing. Castor tried to reason with Raven, even going along with this nonsense. Raven stroked his beak with his wing, resembling Eamon when he said something stupid with a wise face for some reason. That's true, young Padawan. That's how Castor managed to bring Raven back. Though Raven was constantly glancing back, pointing at his eyes with his wing and then back at Scarecrow as if warning it that he could see through its act. Some time later, Raven was standing on a table, shaking his wings and then pointing at the crudely drawn picture of Scarecrow on the board after walking in circles for 20 minutes. Then he screeched from sleep deprivation and anger. It does not talk. It does not move. This does not make sense. It has been there for an entire fucking week. Who the fuck is this guy? After that, another day passed. It was early morning, and mist was engulfing the entire forest as Raven glided down from the sky, landing on a familiar rock and glaring at his nemesis. Scarecrow remained motionless, its red eyes just staring back at him, lifeless and cold. Raven watched it for a few minutes, his eyes burning with hatred and bloodlust as he spread his wings, cawing loudly, "What do you want from me?" That's the gist of it, Castor said after explaining where Raven was and what he had been doing. Huh, for an entire week. He is still at it. Eamon muttered, dumbfounded. Raven originally did not have the ability to speak human language, but after eating some human corpses. That is concerning. Tell me about it. He is obsessed with that Scarecrow as if he is hunting his nemesis. Castor shrugged. Ha. Eamon pinched his nose in irritation. And Mr. Jacob is not in the city too. Wait, what? Mr. Jacob is away. Castor froze, his eyes widening in horror. Eamon was confused at first, but then he too realized the gravity of the situation. Oh, shit. Guys, quickly grab your things and let's go, we are leaving. He yelled, while the others groaned, dragging themselves up, but as they heard that Raven was all alone in the Moirai without anyone to watch over him, they understood the situation. Love you, dear, bye. Eamon kissed Luna quickly and ran after his cohort. What in actual, fuck? Castor muttered, looking at the ridiculous scene in front of him, rubbing his eyes as if he could not believe what he was seeing. The others were no better, because they too were equally shocked. At this very moment, around 200 scarecrows were locked in a brutal fight against dozens of giant birds. Of course, those birds were Raven's clones, and by the looks of it, the scarecrows had some ability to create clones as well. Castor instantly summoned his GN, wide-eyed. Shit, that idiot was right. Don't strike the scarecrows. Raven's clone yelled, catching a scarecrow in his talons and immobilizing it. Where is it? Where? Raven narrowed 2 of his 4 eyes, then he noticed a normal, harmless-looking one slipping into the city. It did not look as savage as the other scarecrows and was avoiding the battle entirely. Found you, bastard, you're dead, he thought and descended from the half-built pagoda, masking his presence with illusion and striking it. But blood gushed out from this one, and it started screaming with a distorted voice as if its mouth had been sewn shut. Shit. Raven cursed, but in the next moment, another scarecrow appeared from a dark alley, its red eyes burning with malice as it caught Raven, whose body started deforming. Raven's eyes widened in horror, his heart beating wildly as the sewn mouth of the scarecrow began opening, strings becoming taut until snapping as its mouth split open and bestial fangs replaced the empty spot, sinking deep into Raven's flesh. Raven screeched, trying to slow down the process. The bastard was trying to turn him into a scarecrow as well. Cawing loudly, he turned around, trying to spread his wings, and when he could not, his body started dissolving into mist, escaping the terrible grip of the scarecrow and transforming into Carapace Centurion, his scythe slashing down and severing its arm. The scarecrow staggered back, its form becoming more monstrous. It started growing in size, its shirt button snapping while it adjusted its hat with another arm. Straw fell from its severed arm as it growled. The scarecrow's eyes looked more like those of a living creature now. Its wooden legs grew larger, more like logs than sticks. But it was not some average scarecrow. It was crafted as if it were a work of art. But Raven did not give it the opportunity to transform in peace. In the next moment, he transformed into a crimson terror. Raven had devoured the body of the terror and could transform into it as well. That was why he had been able to sustain the Crimson Spire and act as a sole conduit for the artificial sun for 3 long months without killing anything. He stood tall, his maw opening as a tiny dot of light appeared in the dark depth of his mouth. It grew brighter and brighter until, blinding, a soul-annihilating beam descended on the scarecrow like a pillar of light, burning both its body and soul as the scarecrow roared in anguish. Raven did not let it have a chance to breathe, shifting his form once again. This time he became a gorgon, slithering towards the scarecrow and coiling around its body, imprisoning it, then locking eyes with it. Slowly, the scarecrow began turning to stone. First, its eyes became stone. Then its head, neck, shoulders, and arms, until it had been transformed into a statue. Raven hissed, releasing the terrible creature and striking it with his tail, shattering it into pieces with a look of disgust. Only its head remained, which still retained some semblance of life for some reason. Transforming back into his original form, Raven leaned forward and pooped on its head before saying, "When you see Shadow God in his realm, tell him Raven says, hello." All the scarecrows, which were supposed to be clones of the original, fell down, straw, old shirts, and hats scattering and disappearing, leaving behind only people. Eamon stared at this, his expression thoughtful. Parasitic creature, huh? Raven must have sensed it. At the same time, he heard Spell announcing the kill in his head. "You have defeated an awakened titan, bane of the cursed messengers. You have received a memory, seed of Avian's nemesis. ... At the same time, Mr. Gunlog, please wake up." A soft voice whispered in Gunlog's ear and he opened his eyes groggily. "Did the movie start or something?" Gunlog yawned, grabbing his bottle of juice, which was, in truth, alcohol, really. "Ah, headache. But hey, what better way to fight a hangover than getting wasted again?" "No, Mr. Gunlog. It's already over. In fact, it's been a few hours since everyone left. We're cleaning the theater right now." Gunlog blinked, dumbfounded. Tilting his head, he frowned, then gulped down his whiskey before leaning back with a confused look. Fair enough. I was right, dumbass," Raven said smugly. No one knew how the bird was able to cross his arms. Wings, but somehow it was possible. "My bad, man." Castor sighed, feeling dejected. Eamon was not paying attention to them and instead was staring at the scarecrows, or rather at what remained of them after people escaped. By the looks of it, the scarecrow wasn't creating clones and was instead possessing the creature's body. It was a useful ability. Not to mention it was able to hide its presence. Luckily, Raven found out about it and prevented a catastrophe. Eamon did not know whether to laugh or cry at such stupidity. To think that what prevented the death of hundreds was a bird finding his nemesis. While Raven could eventually figure it out, it was not something he could do instantly. Only after observing it for some time did he realize that the scarecrow was a nightmare creature. That meant Raven had a problem with the scarecrow whether it was living or not. "This is ridiculous." Eamon smiled in a self-deprecating manner and checked his runes. Memories. Chameleon's cloak, jar of 100 poisons, hidden blades, hawk's eye, hearth, fraud's bag, midnight shard, moonlight shard, spectral mirror, horizon's edge, endless spring, hand of flame, little helper, campfire, messenger's wings, lightning fang, dripping malice, centurion's pride, winter's embrace, seed of Avian's nemesis. Memory. Seed of Avian's nemesis. Memory type. Tool. Rank. Awakened. Tier. 7. Memory description. If the butterfly wings its way to the sweet light that attracts it, it is only because it does not know that the fire can consume it. In the same way, the cursed heralds of the loathsome spire would descend upon the beautiful fields, not knowing what was hiding inside. So that meant this thing was the mortal enemy of spire messengers. That was intriguing. By the looks of it, it had killed a lot of messengers as well, and it liked to rest in forests and fields. The spell did not tell him everything about it, but he understood that it was specifically created to kill spire messengers, meaning the scarecrow was the counter of flying-type beasts. Eamon thought, his expression growing more curious. He remembered how Raven wasn't able to fly when the scarecrow caught him. Normally he should have been able to do so since the scarecrow didn't weigh much, but he was unable to fly, meaning it had the ability to cripple winged creatures. Besides that, Raven was extremely agitated and nervous when fighting it, and its ability to possess living beings was also impressive. All this information told Eamon that despite the fact that the scarecrow was only an awakened titan, it was stronger than normal ones. And when facing avian creatures, it was even more formidable, like a honey badger facing a snake. Usually the most poisonous snake's venom can kill any mammal, but when it comes to a honey badger, they just shrug it off, devour the snake and then fall asleep. After waking up, the venom is neutralized. In the same way, the scarecrow was the perfect hunter of flying-type beasts. It only lost against Raven because he was able to shift into different forms to counter the scarecrow. After analyzing all of this, Aemon sighed, finally focusing his attention on enchantments. Enchantment. Seed of Fear. Only a single enchantment. Aemon was surprised and a bit disappointed, but he quickly composed himself. It was a memory of Tier 7, meaning all the cores were focused on fueling that singular enchantment. Enchantment description. Plant Seed of Fear and let abominable beasts taste terror again. I see. I understand how it is now. Amon's mouth curled up, revealing a satisfied smile. Let's go, guys. I want to test something, he said to his subordinates, glancing at the forest. But then he shook his head, turning around and walking toward the fields. The forest was a good choice to plant the seed as well, but he decided against it. The forest was already dense and intimidating. The deeper one walked inside, the greater the size of the trees became. Not to mention all kinds of plants were growing there. An artificial river that they created was splitting apart inside the forest and then merging once again after exiting it. It was a beautiful place, really, but kind of useless compared to the fields that were giving them food. If nightmare creatures somehow entered the city, it was best to protect the fields first. No food meant no life. That was why he decided to plant the seed of fear in the fields. Raising his arm, he blocked the light of the artificial sun, remaining motionless for a moment, then he let out a soft sigh and started digging the ground. Oi, what are you doing, Twink? Raven asked harshly, his voice filled with suspicion. Yes. Aemon smiled cheekily as he put the seed in the hole and then covered it with dirt. Do you wish to plant Seed of Fear? Aemon heard the spell's voice in his mind, but he wasn't the only one who heard it. As his spiritual bond, there was a special mystical connection established between the two of them. Raven and Aemon could do a lot of things. For example, like Nephi's and Sunny, they could augment each other. The difference was that the shadow bond was slavery while the spirit bond was partnership. But there was so much more they could do because their fates were intertwined. They could communicate telepathically from a distance, but there was a limitation of 50 kilometers, they could feel each other's emotions, they could transfer essence as well if one of them needed it, and when they grew stronger, maybe they could do even more. Raven, for example, was able to create an illusion so realistic that it even fooled Castor's parents back then. Not to mention Aemon was amplifying the effects of the illusion with deceit, so it became even more powerful. But none of that was important right now. What mattered was the fact that Raven could hear the spell's voice as well. Which meant, don't you dare, you fucking femboy. Don't. Yes. Aemon replied to the spell while Raven's eyes widened in horror. Your memory is destroyed. No. Raven screamed as the memory was destroyed and a small, toy-sized scarecrow popped out of the ground. Raven stared at it with a look of pure hatred, then glanced at Aemon. Feeling a bit awkward, Aemon shrugged as if it was nothing, but in the next moment Raven descended upon him, pecking his head furiously. You damned worm, why would you do that? Why? He screeched in anger. Amon's smile twitched and then disappeared, replaced by an irritated look as he defended himself, then grabbed Raven and hurled him away. Shut the fuck up, will you? Sighing, he composed himself. What was his deal anyway? It was just a scarecrow, wait a second. Kaya, not tentacles. He blushed and yelled as Raven transformed into an octopus, tentacles reaching for Aemon, wrapping around his leg and dragging him back toward him. Why are you keying, you dumb fuck? I'm embarrassed, dipshit. Aemon crawled forward, his nails digging into the dirt, but Raven yanked him back, throwing him into the air and then catching him, trapping his body and then slapping him with tentacles. Dafuk. Let me go, you fucking chicken. Aemon yelled as his cheeks started reddening from being slapped so many times. You motherfucker. I told you not to do it, why did you? Just why? Raven shouted in righteous indignation. It's just a scarecrow, you Sanuva bitch. Aemon gritted his teeth in frustration, slipping out of the tentacles and throwing Midnight Shard at Raven, who created a clone and used it as a shield. Before things could escalate any further, Aiko blushed, staring at them as Raven was on top of Aemon, gripping his arms and legs with tentacles so he would not escape anymore. I did not know that you two were into this kind of thing, she said, flustered by the sight. Color me surprised, huh? But everyone has some fetishes so I can't really judge. Kido giggled, covering her mouth. Raven transformed back into a bird, then glanced at Aemon who looked at him as well, both frozen with a baffled look. Then they realized how they fought. Hell nah. Both of them thought in horror, glancing at Haru's with hopeful eyes who was staring at them expressionlessly. His face did not change, nor did he exclaim in surprise. Instead, he looked up at the sky with a lost look, muttering to himself. Gay. Phew, no. It's just a misunderstanding. I am telling you. They tried to convince them that they were really fighting and not doing anything weird, that it was a normal fight, but alas, Kido twisted their words, saying back with a flustered look how shameful it was to normalize such an inappropriate thing. At last, Raven gave up, looking down with his eyes filled with disappointment, shame and sadness. The wind howled, caressing his feathers as he inevitably looked up, glistening tears falling on the grass as he spoke with a hollow look. You promised me that I would get bitches, but you lied, then you revived my worst enemy and now I'm called gay. Who am I but a lil die with big dreams in a cruel world where twinks like you get hot chicks? Raven said in a disheartened tone, his voice filled with sorrow as he spread his wings and flew away. Raven, wait, I can explain. Eamon shouted, trying to reach him with his arm outstretched desperately, but alas, he was gone, only his tears falling from the sky remained as he flapped his wings. Raven inevitably fell into the depth of abyss which was called depression. 2 days later, Gunlog was sitting on the roof, staring at the school with a strange expression, or more accurately, at a specific classroom. Okay, class. Since we have a few unfamiliar faces, let's introduce each other, the teacher said with a tired look. One by one, the students stood up, said their names, greeted the others, and sat back down. Finally, it was time for the young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was around 16 years old and was somewhat famous for being infected by a nightmare spell at the age of 15. Now he was awakened, which made people respect his supposed courage. In reality, he was not courageous at all. He was a coward, and he could easily be called the most pathetic coward in history. Even his aspect reflected that cowardice. His name was also strange, which caused him additional distress. Sighing in resignation, he stood up. The teacher nodded in approval and gestured for him to introduce himself. What is your name? Ah Chu. Bless you, young one, the teacher said with a warm smile. Now, what is your name? Ah Chu. Are you mocking me? I asked you what your name is. The teacher frowned, slightly disappointed by what he thought was disrespectful behavior. The student looked down, on the verge of tears. No, sir, Ah Chu is my name. That's what my dad named me before he disappeared to get the milk. Oh, I. The teacher's eyes widened in disbelief and he fell silent, unable to process it at first. Then he looked down, his expression filled with sympathy and sorrow. My condolences. Gunlog watched this in silence, then gulped down his beer and muttered, wait, did I name him that? He did not really remember. When his son was born, he had been around the same age as him. Frankly, Ah Chu was the product of an inappropriate relationship between a teacher and her student. As for where Gunlog's teacher was now, he had no idea. She was most likely dead or had left the kid in an orphanage and continued her life. His past wasn't anything special. He simply liked to think he had been really cool. That was it, he believed he had been a badass. Gunlog frowned, feeling slightly awkward about his own thoughts, but then again, am I a badass? I am a badass. At least when I am drunk. Still, the reason he was here and had never met his son was simple and painfully idiotic. He didn't know what to say. Sighing, he stood up, jumped from the roof, landed on the asphalt with a yawn, and started walking back home. Oh, I bet that on black, right? What Gunlog didn't know was that peculiar young man in suit and crystal monocle on his right eye was watching everything with a small smile. Ladies and gentlemen, I have decided to add another member to our clan. Eamon announced, his smile courteous and bright as he looked at his clan members. Another member. Cool, I guess, Castor shrugged, barely paying attention as he focused on writing Error's Holy Bible. Boss, why are you adding another member? Aiko asked. She was a little curious about the newcomer, but she did not understand why her boss would do that. She remembered him saying that he did not want the clan to become large. Now, I am sure you, my lovely lady, are surprised by such an unexpected course of events, but I assure you that our newcomer is quite an amusing individual. He tapped his finger on the table, adjusted his monocle, and continued. Not to mention, our cohort will remain exactly the same as it was. Gunlog, Haruz, Castor, Kai, and Kido. Despite being in the clan, you are not part of the cohort, Aiko. But you are still in the clan, of course. You simply take care of the finances. Our new member will have a similar role. He will not be part of the cohort, but he will belong to the clan. I see, Aiko murmured, now understanding the situation. So we will have more people, but the cohort only consists of the heavy hitters. Exactly. Please clap for our dearest lady, who took months to answer such a profoundly difficult question. I am sure her brain cells are astonished as of now. Eamon said with a gentle smile. Aiko blinked and opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. So, she just looked down, feeling dejected. And another announcement. Our clan will officially have a name. I have been thinking about it for some time, and I have come to the sudden realization that I didn't really care about it. So, from now on, we will be called Bug, simple as that. Eamon spread his arms, trying to appear grand, but contrary to his expectations, his subordinates did not look very pleased. Is that it? A bug? Seriously? Kido grimaced, not bothering to hide her dissatisfaction. I guess it is better than the previous one, Haruz muttered, staring at Eamon bleakly. Fine, there is no need to be rude. As for, guys, please awaken Mr. Gunlog from his precious slumber. Eamon sighed with a resigned look. Then he clasped his hands and gestured toward the door. As I was saying, this is our newest member. Please welcome him warmly. A slender young man with blonde hair and blue eyes opened the door and peeked inside awkwardly before stepping in. For a moment he felt overwhelmed by Amon's bright smile and the confused stares of the powerful individuals gathered in the room. Then he cleared his throat and spoke politely. Greetings. What is his aspect? Haruz asked impatiently. Oh my, how tactless, Eamon gasped, covering his mouth with an exaggerated look of shock. Then he dropped the act and laughed, patting the young man on the shoulder. His aspect abilities are quite fascinating. His dormant ability is called, Wah, I am dead. And his awakened ability is, Ew, that's disgusting. It is genuinely interesting. The dormant ability essentially allows him to play dead so convincingly that no one pays attention to him. As for the awakened ability, it makes him smell so disgusting while he is playing dead that no one will ever come near him. Quote. Everyone remained silent, staring at the boy, who looked as if he wanted to bury his head in the ground from shame. There are really all kinds of aspects, huh? Castor muttered, his expression complicated. I guess, Haruz nodded, unsure whether he should laugh at the poor boy or pity him for having such a ridiculous aspect. At the same time, Aiko finally woke up Gunlog, who opened his eyes with an annoyed look. But then, his annoyed expression instantly crumbled when he saw the boy standing in front of him. His eyes widened in shock and his body trembled. Achoo. Bless you, my guy. Castor muttered absent-mindedly. When did you catch a cold? Haruz yawned as he leaned forward, his already hunched back curling even more. No, you silly buffoons. Eamon laughed and waved his hand, then gestured toward the boy. It is his name. Achoo, this is your new clan. My dear friends, this is Achoo. Eamon smiled brightly, but his expression shifted as if he had forgotten something. Luckily, he recalled quickly and continued. Oh, by the way, Gunlog, this is your long-lost son. And Achoo, this is Gunlog, your alcoholic and gambler father who recently lost his house and is currently homeless. Eamon paused for a moment, letting the words settle, then added with a warm smile. And Achoo, you are also the result of an inappropriate relationship between your daddy dearest and his teacher. A product of pedophilia, dare I say. Now that everyone knew each other, things would be much easier. I am so kind, I am actually taking care of my subordinates' problems. Not to mention, letting a son find his father. This moment is too emotional, Wait, why are you crying? Eamon blinked, dumbfounded. As for Achoo, tears were streaming down his face and his expression was filled with despair and sorrow. Tears of happiness. He is overwhelmed, that's understandable. Eamon nodded to himself, satisfied with his work, and left the room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Moirai. Today is a bright day filled with adventures, sponsored by our Lord and Savior, Mr. Error. Castor shouted with a solemn face, wearing wizardly robes which were exactly what a priest of Mr. Error should wear according to Eamon. This day was quite special, at least if we believe what Castor said. Holding the Holy Bible of Error, he glanced at the crowd with a gentlemanly smile. All around him were people of great power and influence. In truth, these people were delegates who had visited from the Song and Sword domains, along with government agents and members of independent clans. Why was this happening? Mr. Jacob wanted to broaden his influence and attract more awakens to join Rose Redemption. It was disguised as a simple celebration for the opening of the temple, and the great clans used the excuse of wanting a peaceful relationship with Rose Redemption to come and see what was really happening. Mr. Jacob was really exhausted from transporting so many people here as well, but the other saints helped, so the burden lessened. What surprised Eamon and the gang was that Mr. Jacob allowed their potential enemies to anchor themselves to the citadel. At the same time, he killed the limbless, chained creature imprisoned in the depths of the spire that acted as a spirit conduit, and instead became one himself, saying that a saint's soul was much more potent and powerful and did not need as many sacrifices. That was also good in a way, since they no longer needed to sacrifice as many soul shards as before, because a saint's soul was vastly more powerful than that of a mere awakened beast. And Mr. Jacob's soul was even more powerful than that of a normal saint. He was an exception. Castor, though, did not bother thinking about any of that anymore. Frankly, he did not really care, since his whole attention was focused on the streets. This was more of a festival anyway. As Eamon and Mr. Jacob discussed, culture was very, very important. And thus, this day was called Adventure Time. Castor was not aware of the reason why Eamon named it that, but he remembered the things Eamon said about Adventure Time raising him or something along those lines, which left him a bit confused. Eamon was also cursing some princess and calling her Makima's mom, and Castor had no idea who Makima even was. However, Castor wasn't bothered by it. Mr. Error was the patron god of adventurers, thieves and pranksters, so Castor was quite glad that there was a day dedicated to celebrating the blessed ones of the Lord. Castor originally wanted to honor Mr. Error with this day, but Eamon insisted that it had to be a special day, which was the 29th of February. This day existed to make logic out of an illogical cosmic reality. Eamon said that the 29th of February was also a fixed error in the calendar, that it held power and had a mystical connection to Mr. Error, directly pointing at him. Because of that, Castor could only nod silently. While he was a bit saddened that he would not be able to celebrate Mr. Error's day this year, at least he could do it in the next one, so that was something to look forward to as well. As for Adventurer's Day, it was held during the winter solstice, which was also the same day when sleepers were transported into the dream realm. What could he say? Moirai was becoming cooler and cooler. As he glanced at the festival stalls, the bustling streets and the gathered people, he felt a bit emotional, if he was honest. The gathered awakens were also a bit odd as they looked around. The city was not finished, but it was still beautiful and classy. This street was called Swindler's Trick and it was a bazaar, and while the name sounded funny, the moment you experienced shopping there, it stopped being funny entirely. Why? Well, there was one very important reason. There was a guaranteed chance of getting scammed. The temple of Mr. Error wasn't located here, though. It was in the north, where the water flowed into the city. It was a bit of a lonesome and ominous place, shrouded in fog that made everything barely visible to normal people. Luckily, no one here was normal. Even so, it was still a little difficult to see when walking through that fog. But we'll get back to the church later. For now, it was time to have fun, if you could manage that while getting scammed, that is. Anyway, since there were stalls, it meant things could be bought. And that meant there had to be a currency. Luckily, Forgotten Shore was a rich land, filled with ores, gold, silver, and many other valuable treasures. Whoa, you guys have oil. A certain red-haired guy shouted from somewhere. Yes, they had oil too. For some reason, Castor felt a chill run down his spine as excited laughter followed that question. Back to the point, the currency used here was mainly made from two of the most common crystals. One was red in color, though it wasn't a ruby, and the other was gray. The one made from gray crystal was called amantes. The head of an amantes coin depicted a bizarre symbol. It was streaked with faint veins of light, like frozen lightning or fragments of stars trapped in coin. At its center glowed a white, radiant spiral, ringed by 5 smaller circles connected with finely etched lines. Within each circle was a motif resembling a clock's face, its hands frozen in impossible arrangements. Indeed, it was a symbol of Mr. Error's power. Its tail, meanwhile, showed two figures, a man and a woman. There wasn't any grand design like the head, but for some reason, it was more intricate. To put it simply, the tail depicted the card of lovers. As for the other coin, made from red crystal, well, it was called Luna. Castor grimaced at the thought and cast a glance at a certain man sitting atop the roof of a pagoda, adjusting his monocle with a gentle smile. Yeah, favoritism was a thing. It wasn't hard to guess that Eamon was biased as fuck. Luna was a red coin. Its head depicted a crimson moon, dripping with blood that fell onto the scarlet sea, as if the sea itself were made of blood. The water reflected the moon in a bizarre, unsettling way, while the moon shone with a blinding radiance, illuminating the surrounding darkness. Its tail showed a colossal winged woman, composed entirely of stacked reproductive organs. She stood loftily on the earth, holding up the heavens themselves to prevent them from collapsing, yet her abdomens were entirely hollow. Gee, if that wasn't disturbing. Castor shook his head. Basically, a dormant soul shard could be exchanged for 1 Luna. An awakened soul shard was worth 10 Luna. Ascended was worth 100, and transcendent was worth 1,000. There were, of course, supreme shards that could be exchanged for 10,000 Luna. If there was a sacred shard, it could be exchanged for 100,000, and if divine, for 1,000,000. But seriously, no one was bringing supreme, sacred, or divine shards. They were just there for show. Even transcendent shards were too rare to exchange. So mostly it was dormant, awakened, and ascended shards. As for Amantes, 100 Amantes could be exchanged for 1 Luna as well. Not to mention, Mr. Jacob used certain methods to make the coins special. He hired specialists who could imbue objects with mystical qualities. For example, Amantes could be used to recover a bit of essence while Luna could be used to heal yourself. There were plenty of memories as well in Mr. Jacob's arsenal to create such effects. Oh, and the denominations of Amantes were 5, 10, 50, and a 100. The same applied to Luna. Castor was still a bit baffled by how Mr. Jacob and Eamon had created new currency, but at this point, he was neither surprised nor did he care much about it. So why was he explaining all of this? Well, it was because their guests were about to get scammed. Right now, Saint Yunban, Beastmaster, and Saint Hel, Death Singer, were exchanging shards to get coins. Right now, I have 8 ascended shards and 2 transcendent ones. Yunban counted the shards in her bag, which was a memory with a pocket dimension inside it. That would be 280 Luna, my lady, Aiko answered with a pleasant smile. Castor stared at her, not knowing what to say. So she was just removing zeros. A transcendent shard was, in fact, 1,000 Luna, and Aiko exchanged it only for 100. While an ascended shard was worth 100, and she exchanged it for just 10. Such a blatant display of greed, how shameless. Castor thought, exasperated, and then gave Aiko a thumbs up. As expected of the followers of Mr. Error. She wasn't alone in this. Everyone in Rose Redemption agreed to rob their guests, and everyone had learned the same script in case questions were asked. Not to mention, those pitiful guys wouldn't even question them or demand justice. Why? They were filthy rich and didn't care. To be honest, this was Amon's idea, saying something about scamming Arabs at the beach and other things he didn't really understand. Hey, you two ladies, any spare change? Many might have already guessed who this peculiar individual was. It was none other than the Laughing Storm, Gunlog, the greatest bum of Moirai and a local beggar who was also a gambler and an alcoholic. Yunban and Hel stared at him for a moment, their expressions blank, but then Hel exclaimed with a loud gasp. Oh, you poor thing. It's not much, but here, take 100 Luna. Hel said with a sad look as Gunlog nodded, put the coins in his pocket, and left whistling. Now, maybe I shouldn't go to Gambler's Bliss, nah. Let's bet on black again, Lady Luck will not betray me today. Gunlog murmured and went on his way, which was business Aiko had started by taking a huge debt. But because of those pitiful buffoons, many thought that she would pay it back more quickly than expected. Gambler's Bliss was the street where casinos and all kinds of shabby things were located. Such a poor fellow, right? Hel asked, almost tearing up. Perhaps life was always hard no matter where you were. Indeed. But I find it quite strange that the coin is named after our dear sister. Yunban smirked teasingly at Luna, who was eating ice cream. Where did those guys get it? Ask Eamon in his fraudulent bag. Right. That's so endearing. I didn't know that vile man could be so romantic. I'm kind of envious now. Hel giggled softly, hugging Luna. Luna had a warm and joyful expression as she ate her ice cream. Her eyes practically sparkled while a bit of cream dirtied her cheek and mouth. But as she heard Hel, she grimaced, her expression instantly becoming irritated. Why would he do that? I'm so embarrassed right now. She complained, taking a bite of strawberry from her ice cream. Now, don't be so hard on him. It's pretty cute, don't you think? Yunbin smiled, crossing her arms under her chest. Luna paused, her expression contemplative as she fell into thought. Then her cheeks reddened a bit as a warm, dreamy smile appeared on her face. Right, he's so adorable. Hel blinked, dumbfounded by the constant shift in mood. Pregnancies are scary. At the same time, because of a lack of soul shards, Medici stole money from someone he perhaps shouldn't have. It was Lady Morgan, Princess of the Sword Domain. And right now, she had figured it out and was searching for the red-haired man in the streets with a deathly serious expression, her eyes filled with bloodlust. Meanwhile, Eamon and Medici were just chilling while eating shawarmas. And the one cooking them was Haruz. Haruz had discovered his talent too. He had always known he was especially great at butchering people and abominations, but he hadn't realized he was a great cook as well. One more, please. Medium-sized, with onions and peppers as well. I want it juicy and fresh. Also, add spicy cheese. The young woman asked with a satisfied smile on her face. I've got you, boss. Haruz said calmly as he started cutting the tomatoes. As you could see, he was a proper kebab guy, or shawarma guy. He was selling both, so whatever. Medici, hearing this, grinned, patting the young woman on the shoulder with a laugh. I see that you also have great taste, my friend. Thank you, the young woman said softly. Ha, no need. I'm just admiring your taste in food. By the way, what's your name? Medici asked, taking a bite of the shawarma. Oh, I am Morgan of Valor, the young woman said, smiling warmly. Meat, pepper, and tomato fell from Medici's mouth as his jaw dropped, and he stared at her with wide eyes. Ah, I'm cooked. Eamon nodded calmly, sipping his juice. You think, Mr. Medici, would you be so kind as to have a small conversation with me? Morgan asked sweetly, gesturing for him to follow. When Medici didn't move and took a step back, Morgan grabbed his hair and dragged him along. Eamon, help, we've been found out. Medici thrashed around, trying to break free, his hand outstretched toward Eamon, who only continued sipping his juice as if Medici didn't exist. Who's we, hot dog? There's no we. You're on your own, lad. Luckily, Morgan didn't believe his nonsense and just walked away, holding Medici's long hair firmly. But because of Morgan's flaw, Medici's hair was cut to pieces. So she decided to grab his leg this time. She expected screams. Well, he was screaming, but not in pain. Instead, he was calling for help, which was quite shocking. It meant Medici had some kind of attribute that resisted her flaw. How intriguing, Morgan thought with a faint smile. Eamon, staring at them, tilted his head, a wide grin appearing on his face. Well, once again, he had kinda exploited a loophole. Medici's armor had a requirement to defeat 7,000 enemies or something. He didn't really remember the exact numbers, but that was fine. Once you fulfilled those numbers, the armor would become soul-bound. But defeating so many enemies wasn't exactly easy. That's why Eamon thought about it, and around 3 seconds later, advised Medici to use his subordinate. Basically, they would fight, and in a second Rosric would admit his defeat, and that's it. The runes never said anything about killing, and the armor certainly couldn't know that Medici was cheating. So it worked, and now he had a marble shell. Well, enough about that, Eamon thought, his expression becoming a bit amused. Why? Of course, because Changing Star and her merry band of autistic gremlins were looking around like country bumpkins. When Neffys noticed Eamon, she nodded to him and walked toward Harris's glorious restaurant, taking a seat. Hi. Oh my, such a passionate reunion. I'm astounded by your stupendous way of greeting. I must admit, it was quite a splendid display of your special trait. Eamon exclaimed with a pleasant smile. Neffys frowned, not understanding what he was talking about, until Cassie sighed. He's calling you mentally ill. I wouldn't dream of it, my fair ladies, Eamon gasped, covering his face with his hand in mock shock. Cassie's hand trembled, her expression showing a faint hint of displeasure and anger. It doesn't matter. She paused, a frown forming on her face. Were you always that tall? I'm not really that tall. It's just, my lady, that I'm not as masterful in the art of being close to the ground as you are. My deepest apologies, Eamon said with a gentle smile. Cassie blinked, her jaw dropping as she adjusted her blindfold, taking a deep breath and letting it out slowly. Calm down. He's just provoking you. He's always doing that to everyone. Stay calm, UGHH, I hate this guy. Effie glanced at Eamon, raising an eyebrow before laughing. Oh, is it because of those, huh? She pointed at his boots. No wonder. Why don't you take them off and show us the real you? Oh my, how shameful, Eamon murmured, hastily hiding his body with a panicked expression. Random passers-by overheard it, grimaced at Effie, and kept walking. Raised by hose. One who endured the nastiest backshots in the Forgotten Shore. Widened one. They muttered to themselves as they passed. Effie lowered her head, fists clenched. I hate this guy. Nephews blinked, staring at the stone road with a lost look. How can someone so adorable have such a sharp tongue? Morgan unsheathed her sword and stared at Medici with a murderous gaze. This little, muscular punk, how dare he? Wait. I'm sorry. I swear, I can explain. Medici raised his arms, his face pale and sweat pouring down his forehead as he stepped back. Morgan tilted her head, her vermilion eyes burning with anger while her lustrous black hair cascaded down her back. She was wearing simple black pants, a white blouse and high heels, with dark glasses pushed up on her head. I'm listening. You see, Medici began, a manly tear sliding down his cheek. My wife and kids, we haven't eaten in days. You could say that we're starving. If I hadn't taken those coins, then I wouldn't have been able to provide for my family during the festival. Medici said with a sad, lonesome expression. Morgan could have sworn she even heard the cries of babies, which made her more bewildered than sympathetic. What in actual? Wait a second. Her eyes widened, then she looked back and saw that Eamon had summoned some kind of memory that was creating the sound while he was giggling. He tilted his head and smirked at Medici. You know damn well that you ain't pulling bitches. That was enough confirmation as Morgan raised her sword. Medici, a bit panicked now, gulped down his saliva and shouted in desperation. Hey, all right, I will make it up to you. Then he pulled out a ticket and showed it to Morgan. It's a free ticket to the Raven's Magic show that will start at night during the festival. Morgan stared at him for a full minute, completely expressionless. Her eyes were fixed on the ticket with such an unimpressed look that Medici felt as if she were evaluating a piece of trash rather than a person. Sensing her reaction, Medici wisely hid behind Eamon, who was calmly sipping his juice after taking a bite of his spicy shawarma, chewing with a perfectly straight face. How about the Colosseum, then? At that, Morgan's ears seemed to perk up. She turned toward Eamon, curiosity glinting in her eyes. That is a fine suggestion, Duke Eamon. But I do have a question. Eamon shrugged, tossing the empty glass back at Haru's, who immediately threw another grape juice at him. Before it could reach him, the juice vanished in the air, appearing in his hand and he continued sipping it. Sure, what is it? Morgan smiled pleasantly, crossing her arms. Can guests fight? Eamon raised an eyebrow in surprise but nodded nonetheless. Everyone can, really. There are two types of fight. Duels and battle royale. Luckily or not, today is the day of battle royale. He paused, glancing at her. But you have to pay to participate. Morgan's expression twitched. She had the feeling that something was really wrong with this place. Why should I pay for everything, UGHH? She huffed, rolling her eyes in irritation. Fine, we will. We. Medici pointed at himself with a baffled look. Seeing his reaction, Morgan smiled sweetly, patting his shoulder. Yes, we. If you win, you can keep the money. If I win, you do me a favor. How's that, Mr. Medici? Medici's eyes widened, then he frowned. While his social anxiety was quite the headache and he had, because of a certain someone, developed a fear of women, that did not mean he was an idiot. Sure, he could do a small favor but nothing outrageous that went against his own desires. All right, but nothing ridiculous. That's great. Now, shall we? She gestured toward, well, she had no idea where that was. She quickly remembered that she was not familiar with this place. No worries, princess. I've got you. Eamon waved his hand with a cheerful smile. Oh, you have my gratitude, mysterious Duke. Morgan bowed slightly, though it was more mocking than respectful, not that Eamon cared. His attention was mostly focused on his shawarma. As Morgan turned around, Medici grabbed Amon's shoulders, shaking him with a pissed, desperate look. Fuck, what have you done? I'm done for, dude. She will destroy me. Chillax, hot dog. You will thank me later. Medici blinked, staring at his calm, bored smile with a bewildered look. What's he scheming? Ignoring Medici's desperate look, Eamon stretched with a loud yawn and added with a satisfied expression, and I've heard there will be free food too. Cheers for that, lad. Right. Now you get it, holy shit. When did you appear, dude? Eamon jumped back in shock, his heart beating wildly as he saw Gunlog beside him. He had spawned out of nowhere. I've heard there was free food so here I am. Gunlog replied with a smile, then glanced at his shawarma. Hey, can I get a bite? Eamon narrowed his eye, then started licking the shawarma. After finishing, he handed it out to Gunlog with a warm smile. Here, take it. Forget it, Gunlog muttered, not accepting it and deciding to wait for the free food, even if he was tempted to take the shawarma. At the same time, beside Horace's stall was Achu and his cafe. Standing before him were Neffys, Effie and Cassie. After eating at Horace's glorious palace of peace and happiness, they decided to drink some coffee and enjoy desserts. What will you order? Cassie asked Effie and Neffys softly. I will have pudding. Neffys nodded, her expression calm. Then I will get that apple pie. Effie giggled cheerfully. That's not apple pie. It's some strange fruit Keto created. If I remember correctly, it's called budsgoo, Cassie reminded. Bah, who cares about that? What's important is enjoying food, so shut up, Saws. I'm starting to think that's exactly what you want, Cassie replied sharply. Gee, they're about to throw hands. Achu muttered. It's nothing. It's just that she's buttered because her cookies tasted like poison. Cassie crossed her arms, stating it calmly. I poured my heart into it and you and Sunny couldn't even appreciate it. Effie huffed, feeling especially salty now that she had been reminded of it. Hey, if you aren't here to eat, can you fuck off? Achu muttered. At this point, it was getting annoying. Coming through. Aiko giggled as she walked straight to Achu, ignoring all three of them. Aiko was in a really good mood after making so much money, practically sparkling as she placed her hand on her chest and declared haughtily, I want your entire stock of fudge. Hey, Aiko. Can you get those guys away from me? Achu raised his hand, covering his eyes from the light of the artificial sun. Lesbians scare me. I'm not, that, Cassie said, grimacing in displeasure. Aiko, you can't just cut the line. Neffys said flatly, her eyes glued to the pudding. Who are you again? Aiko squinted, staring at them with exaggerated focus, her finger resting on her cheek. Effie nodded, supporting Neffys. Hey, who do you think you are? Neffys nodded. I don't think it's polite to cut the line like that. It's not like you're a king or something. Aiko laughed, throwing her head back and placing her hand on her chest, closing her eyes. I am Aiko, the person who is managing the entire economy of the Moirai. And also your elder. Oh, 24 years and you couldn't even grow a few inches. Effie giggled, covering her face. Involuntarily, a small smile appeared on Neffys's and Cassie's faces as well. Hey, take that back, I have a sensitive heart. Aiko glared at them, giving them the middle finger, her eyes tearing up. Effie stuck out her tongue in mockery, while Neffys closed her eyes, her lips twitching. Ha ha ha, that's why you're still under 5 foot. That's why your father's dead. Aiko shouted back. Neffys and Effie froze, their eyes widening in shock. How tall is he now, huh? Oh, right, 6 foot under. Aiko spat with venom. Rule number 9. Don't mention Aiko's height and don't mention that she's flat as a plank. Damn. Gunlog shook his head, standing beside Achu and eating Neffys's pudding. That was brutal, even I feel bad. Achu blinked, realizing his dessert was disappearing next to him. Then his expression twisted with anger as he grabbed the pudding and yanked it away from Gunlog. Fuck off, you boomus punk. Hey, take care of your old man, Achu. Gunlog muttered, trying to sneak another bite. Bless you, Cassie said softly. At that, Achu let the pudding go, then looked up, a manly tear flowing from his eye. I hate my life, fuck. Shut your mouth, unwanted, near-aborted brat, and pack my damned fudges. Aiko yelled, pointing a knife at Achu. Okay, fine. Chill out. Achu muttered, packing the fudge and handing it to Aiko, who walked away cheerfully. Meanwhile, Eamon returned after escorting Morgan and Medici to the Colosseum. Then he noticed the kind of mess happening near Achu's cafe and frowned, walking toward it while sipping another juice. Then Gunlog appeared beside him, spitting and cracking his neck. Boss, I'm starving. Can we just go to the Colosseum and get that free food? Not yet, it's not time, Eamon replied casually. Not to mention, Rose Redemption is kinda broke now. Why do you think we're scamming those idiots? And Bug is also broke because someone decided to steal all our savings and bet on the race of carapace scavengers. But I thought Mr. Krabs could win. Gunlog shouted in righteous indignation. Yes, those idiots caught the scavengers, locked them up, and then forced them to race by placing a human at the finish line so the abominations would rush after them. Of course, that person was usually Castor, who could just destroy the scavengers or escape thanks to his ridiculous speed. Yeah, whatever, man. We're broke again because of that, Eamon yawned, shaking his head. So, pudding, ice cream, and budsgoo pie. That'll be 80 Luna, Achu said, eyeing the trio, who he assumed were lesbians with psychological problems. As Neffes was about to take out coins, she froze, checking her pockets and finding nothing. Did any of you have some coins? I think I lost mine. Quote. Both Cassie and Effie remained silent. Aiko, what have you done this time? Eamon frowned, looking back at Aiko, who was jumping around in joy while eating her fudge. Oh yeah, Achu remembered that they were lesbians. Couples eat for free today. Effie stepped forward, grabbing Cassie's hand with a confident smile, but Achu's next words froze her in place. But you have to kiss for proof. Achu grinned, intertwining his fingers in anticipation, but they just looked down gloomily and walked back, leaving him disappointed. As they left, Eamon and Gunlog were revealed. Gunlog's face was twisted into a wide, maniacal smile as he spread his arms with glee, laughing wildly. Boss, I have an idea. Absolutely not. At this moment, the entire Moirai went wild as everyone rushed toward Achu, who had closed his cafe and was walking out with a confident smile. Achu! Achu! People cheered wildly, leaving Neffes and the others dumbfounded. Achu continued moving forward, and it seemed like everyone in Swindler's Trick was following him behind. Destination: Colosseum. Okay, I talked to Aiko, so things changed. The first part will be duels, while the other will be battle royale. You guys will participate in 3 battles. Those with the highest points will get to enter the battle royale, understand? Eamon explained to Medici and Morgan. Medici nodded, a wide grin appearing on his face as he punched his open palm, while Morgan had a faint, satisfied smile on her face. I'll be cheering for you, Medici. Luna giggled, patting Medici's shoulder and giving him a thumbs up, which he returned with an even wider grin. Hey, bet everything on me. Medici said with absolute confidence, acting arrogantly. Eamon had the feeling that Luna was fanning the fire. It didn't feel like encouragement, it felt more like she was feeding his ego, and she was doing it with an innocent smile. So she wants Medici to act like he's Alit, only to lose miserably. Eamon glanced at her with a faint smile. That's my girl, this is going to be fun. As they left Morgan and Medici, Luna asked Eamon curiously, hugging his arm. So, who are you going to bet on? Eamon kissed her cheek, his mouth curling into a small smile. You'll see. Luna rolled her eyes, huffing as she was about to retort, but then Eamon summoned Fraud's bag and pulled out some ice cream. It's so sweet, Luna said with a dreamy smile, taking a bite. Jackpot, Eamon thought, seeing her happy, and nodded. He wasn't really in the mood to listen to her nagging. Yes, Luna wasn't perfect, especially when she was pregnant. The amount of complaints Eamon was forced to listen to almost drove him crazy. At last, they left the underground area where fighters were preparing for battle and approached the woman at the betting window. The arena resembled a Roman Colosseum. The ground was a mix of blood and sand, though the fighters weren't allowed to kill and were prohibited from using any weapons. Along the way, they met Gunlog and Haruz. Luna asked how they were doing, paying particular attention to Gunlog, who was in a rather peculiar situation after finding his long-lost son. Greetings, Duke. The woman smiled politely at Aemon, then glanced at Luna. Princess Luna, it's an honor to meet you. Can I ask who you would like to bet on? She continued, bowing faintly. Luna touched her chin, pondering for a moment, then smiled and handed over her coins. I will be betting on Morgan. The woman nodded, taking the money and handing her the ticket. Then she and Luna glanced at Haruz, Gunlog, and Aemon. Aemon had a small smile playing on his lips. Haruz was grinning darkly, his expression a bit scary and his eyes murderous, causing the woman to gulp. Gunlog, meanwhile, was laughing loudly, hands in his pockets. Then, they pulled out their coins and handed them to the woman. 500 Luna on Achu. Haruz grinned. 700 Luna on Achu. Gunlog was next, but before Aemon could place his bet, he frowned, glancing at Gunlog. Haruz wore a similarly bewildered look. Dude, why do you have money? Aemon asked in confusion. Yeah, aren't you homeless after betting your house? Haruz added. Gunlog smirked, shaking his head in amusement. Amateurs, of course I begged. Quote. Both of them stared at him for a few seconds, then nodded in understanding. Of course, where else would he get money? It made sense. I want 1,000 Luna on Achu, too. Aemon smiled at the woman and handed her the coins. Boss, how could you? I thought you didn't have money. Gunlog said, his expression betraying his disbelief. Hey, I didn't. Aemon grimaced at his pitiful look. Then how? Oh. Gunlog and Haruz nodded this time, understanding exactly what had happened without a word. After getting their tickets, they went to their seats. Luna, this time, didn't know what was happening. Why are you guys betting on Achu? He's going to lose miserably. The three of them glanced at her, then shook their heads with self-satisfied, smug looks, as if she didn't know the ways of the world. Because Achu is a 3-time champion and the most powerful fighter in this arena. Luna blinked. What the fuck? Her confusion was cut short when Haruz bumped into someone and then hit his head on a pillar. Hey, watch where you're going, bitch, huh? Sishin glanced back at him, Helen Yunbin at her side. But after seeing Haruz and Gunlog, her expression darkened with displeasure. Come to get more. She said this while summoning her warhammer. Gunlog stepped back, hiding behind Luna, while Haruz's eyes dimmed with the memory of that hammer smashing his face. He grimaced, then stepped forward with a dark smile. Meanwhile, Gunlog hissed, whispering to Luna and Aemon, damn, it's a barbarian woman. Seeing her sister raise her hammer, ready to crash Haruz's face again, Luna panicked and instantly hugged her arm, pulling her back. Meanwhile, Gunlog tilted his head, smiled, and pulled out a gun, pointing it at Sishin before pulling the trigger without the slightest hesitation. Click, click, click. Gunlog paused, staring at his gun with a dumbfounded look. I sold bullets to bet on Mr. Krabs, right? But that also meant he couldn't shoot Sishin. Well, shit. Sister, please wait. Luna shouted at Sishin, dragging her back as she tried to reach Haruz, who was staring at her mockingly and waving his hand. And why should I? Sishin gritted her teeth in frustration. I swear you don't want to kill them. Look at them, they're changed man. Haruz is a kebab guy now, not some butcher, and Gunlog is, a loving father raising his son alone because the child's mom left. He has to provide for his son. Look at him, he's practically homeless because he's spending everything on his kid. Luna pleaded, trying with all her might to convince Sishin. Yeah, Sishin. Gunlog's known as the Daddy Storm on social media, Aemon added with a straight face, eating his ice cream. Daddy, what? Sishin squinted, baffled. He's flexing his biceps for teenage girls so they can donate to his channel. Aemon nodded with a proud smile, giving Gunlog a approving look. And Haruz is known as the Kebab King. Sishin and her sisters stared at them, bewildered. For a few seconds, they said nothing, and then, perhaps out of pity, Sishin dismissed her hammer, returning it to her soul sea. I can't hit them, they're already beaten in the head. Yunbin giggled, hugging Amon's arm. And do you have as interesting a name as your subordinates, my charming duke? Aemon gave her a thumbs up. My username's it takes a real man to become best girl. Pardon. Luna, knowing that Yunbin was deliberately trying to annoy her, giggled as she stared at Yunbin's dumbfounded face. Oh my, sister. You don't look well. Luna smiled, separating her from Aemon with a sweet smile, though it was clear she was pissed as she grabbed Amon's arm. It's I'm just surprised, Yunbin muttered, leaving Eamon alone. What's their deal? Gunlog leaned toward Haruz and Eamon. Beats me. Eamon shrugged, eating his ice cream with a straight face, while Haruz just nodded. It's been a while since I wrote an author's note, guys. Hope you're all doing well. I wasn't able to post the chapter because I got drunk accidentally yesterday, so sorry about that. Besides that, I think I did pretty well with world building. What do you think about Moirai? It's a funny place, I think I described how they live pretty well, too. Anyway, guys, this FIC isn't as active as it was before, so throw your stones, will you? And don't forget, Mr. Krabs and Achu are real champions. That's it for now, gang. Enjoy the meal. I still wonder why you allowed me to come, the little boy said calmly while sipping his juice. He looked excited, his smile barely contained. Why not? I can destroy your puppet anytime, so it does not matter. Jacob replied with a bored expression as he watched Achu walk into the arena. Achu wore no armor at all. Only his arms were wrapped in heavy chains, which made his entrance look even more dramatic. Jacob's lips curled the moment Achu began his act. He clutched his throat as if he were dying, stumbling forward like a man on the verge of collapse. It was his signature move, "While I'm dead," and as always, his opponent panicked and rushed toward him to help. The instant the poor man got close enough, Achu snapped his eyes open. He jerked himself upright with sudden strength, twisted his body like a slippery eel, and slid behind the government agent before the man even understood what was happening. The chains whipped around the agent's neck in a smooth, practiced motion, and Achu pulled with every ounce of force he had. The pressure built fast. The man clawed at the chains, his face drained of color. His eyes swam, rolled back, and finally the struggling stopped as consciousness slipped away. The guests watching the fight grimaced in disgust, staring at Achu as if he were some kind of walking contamination. To outsiders he was filth. To Moirai he was the champion. Every opponent who entered the arena with him left humiliated in one way or another, so of course it was entertaining. How disgraceful, the boy muttered with a frown. He tilted his head as if trying to understand how this madness could be considered a sport. That's my boy, Jacob replied with a loud laugh. Achu threw his head back and laughed in triumph. Then, in true Achu fashion, he grabbed a stick and jabbed it into the fallen man's ass. Half the guests recoiled in horror. The other half cheered like lunatics. Achu had won again. He was victorious. He was also still an absolute piece of shit. But Jacob's and the boy's attention was not focused on him but on the young man who was eating popcorn with a straight face, the crystal monocle on his right eye gleaming with an unsettling luster. Next to him sat a beautiful young woman with pale snow-white hair, skin as dark as a starless night, and eyes the deepest shade of red like blood. Why would you destroy your daughter's happiness? That is something I do not understand. You may act like a corpse whose heart is cold enough to freeze hell, but your love for your daughters is still burning like the sun. So why would you ruin young love, Ki-song? Jacob asked, his expression a bit melancholic as he stared at Eamon and Luna. The boy smiled mysteriously, his small form slowly shifting and then completely changing, revealing a breathtakingly beautiful woman in a regal red dress. Her skin was pale like that of a corpse, and a light smile played on her crimson lips. Her raven black hair fell like a lustrous waterfall of darkness, and there was something eerie and vaguely appalling about her beautiful, enchanting eyes. Let us say I was inspired, Ki-song said with a smile, now in her original appearance, as she poured wine into her cup and took a sip. Inspired? By whom or what? Jacob narrowed his eye, glancing at her with suspicion. By your air, Ki-song laughed. She felt genuinely pleased about something, but Jacob couldn't tell what it was yet. Eamon, he said, sighing and leaning back in his chair. Why, of course. I often wondered how a mere dormant human managed to outsmart every person on this forsaken shore, including my daughter, how he manipulated the course of events with such fine precision and defeated his adversaries despite his lack of strength, and how he eventually stole an entire region for himself. Don't you think his story is quite inspiring? Sheer madness to gamble everything, including your own life, on success for nothing grand but your own pleasure and elation. It's ridiculous, truly. Yet, many underestimate him, but I will not, Ki-song stated with a calm smile. Still, he is young and arrogant. He believes that just because he was able to deceive Vale he will be able to do the same with me. But I assure you, a young cub like him is far from my level. You could even say that this time the deceiver was deceived. She covered her mouth, chuckling. That doesn't answer my question. Why do you want to ruin your daughter's happiness? Jacob continued to press her, refusing to let her distract him with useless flattery. Aemon was amazing, yes, but this generation had produced many awakened just as remarkable as him, some even more glorious and powerful. Kisong sighed when she saw he wasn't relenting. Then she looked at Luna, her expression remaining unreadable for a long moment until she finally averted her gaze for some reason. Kneel before me and I will allow them to be together, she said, her eyes cold and piercing. Ha ha ha, and why would I care about that? People fall in love but they can move on. Jacob burst into laughter, slapping his lap. I would have believed it if someone else had said that, but it is you. If people can move on that easily, you would have forgotten your dead wife and child already, isn't that right? Kisong's gaze was unyielding as she spoke. Jacob's face darkened as he looked at her, his eyes turning bleak and unsettling, as if they were dead, even more so than Kisong's, who was actually an animated corpse. I don't think you wish to test my patience. The last time someone tried that, things turned ugly rather quickly. Oh, I admit it. You are a troublesome enemy. But you have a weakness now. Those children you are taking care of are exactly that. Isn't that why you are so adamant about this? I mean, why else would you ask me to let Luna go? Kisong's smile widened. Jacob remained silent, but it was crystal clear that his heart was boiling with fury. Kisong shook her head. Jacob was a stubborn man. He didn't care about traditions or the trends of the times. The only person he had ever concerned himself with was himself, or at least that was how it had been before. Now he cared about his students, which made dealing with him a little easier. I mean, it was quite a tragic event. There wasn't much you could do anyway, not in the dream realm without any healers to help you. Save your wife's life or your son's. It was an unbelievably difficult choice. What did you say back then? I respected my wife's wish, right? In reality you were a coward who couldn't make a decision even when you knew which one was correct. You let your wife die to save your son when, deep down, you already knew that child was dead. Do you think that if you help your heir this time you can atone for that sin? Don't be ridiculous. They are already dead and nothing will change that. Kisong knew that Jacob saw himself in Aemon. Their situations were truly similar. A young man in love with a girl who carried his child, forced to make a choice and take a risk without knowing if he would succeed. The resemblance was as clear as a mirror. Perhaps it was fate that Jacob found Aemon. Two individuals from different generations, yet with the same resolve. As I have said before, I was inspired by your heir. Originally I planned to hold back and maintain balance, but the war will start soon and balance can be damned. The only thing I need is victory. If you don't join my side, I will destroy you and everything you cherish. But if you kneel and acknowledge me as your sovereign, then I will spare your life, I will let you keep this little kingdom of yours, and I will also let Luna go. It isn't that bad of an offer, is it? One way or another you will be forced to sacrifice your neutrality and choose a side anyway, so it is better if you do it now. Kisong stated her terms calmly, waiting eagerly for Jacob's response. So that's how it is. Jacob thought grimly. He didn't have the power to challenge a sovereign, not yet at least. And judging from her words, Kisong had figured out Amon's plan, which was why she said he wasn't on her level yet. Beyond that, all the heavy hitters of Rose Redemption were under Aemon. They weren't that strong yet, but in the future they would become the deadliest cohort this world had ever seen. In other words, Kisong wouldn't let Luna go. There was another factor at play as well, and that was the beast god's lineage that Luna had inherited from her. With that, Kisong had effectively turned her daughters into her puppets too. She would use it as leverage to force Aemon into submission. If Kisong hadn't become as fierce as she was now, Amon's plan might have had a good chance of succeeding, but now it was useless. She had seen through it. What would Aemon choose if Luna and the child were in danger? What would Jacob choose if the lives of his students were endangered? Both of them would accept Kisong's terms. They wouldn't have any other choice. The gap in power was that great. And Kisong wasn't considering letting them go. Sovereigns were usually not interested in mortal affairs, but by the looks of it, the Raven Queen had decided to take matters into her own hands. If she had been like that dull idiot Anvil, then things would have been easier, but it was this insidious woman instead. It was checkmate. Jacob considered his situation, his brow furrowing in thought, then he looked up and asked, that is interesting, I admit. But I have to decline. Then I will kill your heir's unborn child. Nothing is stopping me. Ki Song replied, her voice cold. You are bluffing. You love your daughters, you will never do such a thing. Jacob raised an eyebrow, leaning back. Try me. I would rather make such a sacrifice to win this war than lose. Ki Song was adamant, her resolve unshakable. Fine, we agree. But not as a vassal clan, my fair lady. We can act as mercenaries and assist you in the war that is coming. I am sure that will be more beneficial for you as well, if you understand what I mean. Aemon entered the room, bowing gentlemanly before Ki Song with a focused, calm gaze, then he straightened and adjusted his monocle with a faint smile. Jacob's eyes widened in surprise as he saw Aemon, and even Ki Song had not expected this. As for Aemon, damn it, what monstrous pressure. Is this the will of a sovereign? He gulped, feeling chills crawling up his spine. But he also felt frustrated, he had let his guard down. Just because the great clans had left Nephis and Sunny alone didn't mean he would enjoy that privilege as well. Despite Nephis being an obvious threat, the sovereigns had left her alone after the events of the Forgotten Shore in the novel. Aemon had thought he would also be left alone, that the sovereigns would remain indifferent. But reality was different. Ki Song considered him a threat and had decided to make her move before it was too late. Shit, Nephis, lend me some of your plot armor, will you? Aemon thought, joking to himself to fight back the nervousness crawling under the pressure of the Raven Queen. That is an intriguing offer. Ki Song smiled gently. She had to acknowledge the advantages of Moirai remaining as mercenaries. She knew Aemon was offering this so he could remain as independent as possible. This was his last-ditch effort for freedom. But that did not mean she would refuse it. She understood that if Rose Redemption's position remained ambiguous, there was a good chance they could infiltrate the Valor clan under the guise of mercenary work and deal damage from within under her orders. She couldn't help but laugh at how greedy this boy was. He would certainly act as if he would choose whoever paid more, all to drain the Valor clan dry in the midst of war while still betraying them to aid her. Even so, it was beneficial for both sides. Even if she saw right through his scheme, she wouldn't disagree. Let's say I agree, what would you like in exchange? Ki Song asked, an amused smile playing on her lips. Aemon bowed his head, his palm on his chest like a proper gentleman, and replied, I want Luna. Oh, my daughter. Ki Song raised an eyebrow in mock surprise. Amon's expression darkened, but he forced himself to remain calm. She was mine from the very beginning, just as I am hers. The Raven Queen let out a soft laugh, resting her cheek on her palm. I see, fine, I will arrange everything. After your second nightmare, you will become Luna's consort. I expect great things from you, blasphemer. Amon's blood ran cold as he heard her words, his eyes widening in disbelief and horror. How does she know about the nightmare? This doesn't make sense, or does it? He frowned, his expression growing more thoughtful. Ki Song's original body was merely a puppet, just like the body she was possessing now and the countless pilgrims in her service. She was animated by the power of her aspect rather than truly being alive. She didn't reside in a single vessel. Instead, she existed through her countless puppets, present anywhere her pilgrims were. So what was stopping her from learning secrets? She had more than enough power to do that. Even the corpse of a mere ant might be her, after all. In other words, one of his subordinates or he himself had screwed up and unintentionally leaked information. They might have spoken among themselves thinking they were alone. After all, why would anyone be wary of a fly or an ant? I let my guard down this time, fuck. I never thought she would pay this much attention to me. Because of my arrogance, she learned about my plan and my second nightmare, which means I have been dancing in her palm from the very start, shit. If that is the case, then there is no need to take such a risk. We can wait for Luna to give birth to the child and then. He was interrupted by Ki Song, her voice emotionless and bleak. No, she will challenge the nightmare as she is now. Wasn't she trying to do that from the very start? Behind my back, scheming against her own mother. This nightmare will be her punishment, she stated calmly. But she might die, what do you? Aemon was cut off once again, his eyes filled with confusion and a hint of anger. She might die. That is the life of legacy, boy. Legacies always let the seed of the nightmare bloom in their children's souls, risking their lives just so they can awaken. That is how it has always been. Do you know how many children have died because they were unable to pass the first nightmare? This is the world of the nightmare spell. The weak will always die, and this time, Luna has to prove herself. That is the decision I am making. The Raven Queen left no room for argument as she sipped her wine. As for Aemon, his heart boiled with fiery, murderous fury. He hadn't felt this angry in a long time. Yet, despite his rage, he tried to remain calm and compose himself, clenching his fists until blood began to flow from his palms. I understand. She was right, everyone was in the same boat. Aemon knew that children never chose this life, their parents did. The same applied to Ki Song's daughters. All of them were forced to face nightmares and grow stronger, just as Luna was being forced right now. All right, that's enough. We can be considered partners now, so there's no need for threats. Jacob sighed, trying to lighten the mood and change the subject. Aemon, you can leave. I will take care of the rest. He nodded at Aemon, who closed his eyes for a moment, bowed once again, and left the room. Jacob cursed under his breath, staring at Ki Song as if she were a piece of trash, then snorted. Happy. Indeed, I am. The Raven Queen answered, her smile soft and gentle. Well, if you guys expected that Aemon could deceive Ki Song with only a year of experience, then sorry to disappoint. I'm not planning to make Ki Song an idiot. This time, Aemon lost, and he was outsmarted. Ki Song is a sovereign who can control Luna with her blood. She has countless puppets and enough information to corner Aemon, lol. Anyway, that's it for now. Enjoy the meal, guys. Hope you're all doing well. Medici drew a slow, steady breath as the warmth of the artificial sun washed over him. His face remained expressionless as he tilted his head back, shielding his eyes from the harsh light. Then he lowered his gaze and looked at Morgan. She stood casually in front of him, hands tucked into her pockets, sunglasses hiding her eyes. A smirk tugged at her lips as if the entire scene amused her. The air was thick with the scent of blood and sweat. The sand beneath their feet was stained a deep crimson, and the thunderous roar of the audience swallowed every other sound, turning the world into a single, deafening chaos. Medici felt his heartbeat quicken, his blood boiling with anticipation. With a thought, he summoned his sword. His skin hardened into pale, alabaster marble, quite smooth, cold and inhuman if you asked him. Then obsidian armor grew over him like a second skin, plates forming seamlessly across his body. A dark helmet, reminiscent of an ancient knight's visor, concealed his face. Only his crimson hair remained exposed, cascading down his back like a lion's mane. He flexed his gauntleted fist as a blood-soaked cape unfurled over his left side. A tattered, blood-stained banner materialized in his hand. He drove it into the arena sand, feeling a surge of newfound strength erupt through his veins. It felt raw, violent and monstrous. Now that's what I'm talking about. A grin spread beneath his helmet as he rested his sword on his shoulder and glanced at Morgan, who was staring at him, genuinely surprised. She did not expect this. Medici was radiating a domineering, bloodthirsty aura, as if he were a warmonger who lived only for the sake of war. She had to admit that his presence was oppressive, even for her, despite being ascended while he was a mere awakened. Still, Morgan wasn't any better. She too was starved for battle and blood. What greater bliss existed than facing powerful enemies and crushing them? The feeling was ecstatic, so overwhelming she began laughing loudly, wild and unrestrained. This place, Moirai, was entertaining in its own twisted way. Perhaps because everyone here was insane. It wasn't surprising to her, since she had already taken notice of the people who lived here. They had no interest in what was common or acceptable, they simply did whatever they wanted, living for nothing but their own freedom and pleasure. If that were not the case, what could possibly explain such a madness? They allowed nightmare creatures to race and placed bets on them like it was some kind of sport, and perhaps for them it truly was. They fought each other for fame and the title of the strongest. She knew that whoever entered these tournaments did so either for money or for the pure satisfaction of proving themselves more powerful than everyone else. Not to mention the heir of the king himself cared little about the opinions of others, doing whatever he pleased. He had built a place like this, after all, so it was only natural that he would be the most insane of them all, even if he hid it behind gentleness and politeness. If Morgan was honest, she felt a little envious of them. No, she was truly envious of such a life. A life lived as a person, free and genuine, true to your own nature instead of being a sword wielded by your father. She shook her head, pushing those thoughts away. Such a useless feelings wouldn't help her in battle. What she needed now was focus, nothing more. With that in mind, a faint smile curved her lips as white sparks burst to life around her hand. Her sword materialized in a flash, and she mirrored Medici's unorthodox and arrogant posture, resting her blade on her shoulder just as he did. But what she did not expect was his first comment. "Hey, you are holding a sword. Meh, a broom would suit you more," Medici said, smirking behind his helmet as he deliberately provoked her to get under her skin. For a moment Morgan was still and motionless, staring at him with wide eyes. What? What? Seriously? What are you even doing in the arena, woman? Go back to the kitchen and cook some sandwiches for me. Medici tsked, shaking his head in disbelief while muttering under his breath about how things were back in his days as if he were some elderly veteran. So that is how it is. Morgan chuckled, shaking her head. Yeah, that is how it is. Go where you belong, woman. And please, use a knife, there is no need to use a sword on chicken and vegetables. Medici snorted, his voice dripping with mockery. Morgan blinked, her eyes widening as she felt her expression involuntarily twist into a sneer. Her blood surged hot and violent, her vision tunneling until all she saw was him. Insolent brat, I'm going to butcher you, she thought, her eyes burning with fiery, murderous intensity. Her fingers trembled as she felt her restraint slowly disappear, leaving only the desire to crush him like a maggot. And then, she vanished, her blade cut through the air with a sharp, furious whistle. Medici's eyes widened just a fraction, enough to betray he hadn't expected her to move that fast. Their swords met with a jarring crash, the impact shaking up his arms, sparks scattering where metal scraped metal. Morgan was surprised by his physical strength. It was quite astonishing, to the point that she was convinced he was the most powerful awakened when it came to physical attributes. But that didn't matter. She too had gained physical augmentation from her aspect and used the enchantment she had absorbed from her memory to further boost her strength, overwhelming Medici and sending him flying back from the force of her strike. Medici quickly regained his balance. As he landed, he instantly kicked himself backward across the sand, Morgan already upon him, her boots digging furrows as he regained distance. I was right, the kitchen really suits you, he laughed, tilting his head, though his smug expression was hidden behind his helmet. But Morgan didn't react to his provocation. Though, it felt like she was already furious, to the point that she didn't give a damn about anything other than beating him. From the swirling embers Medici summoned came fiery ravens shooting toward her. Each one detonated in a plume of heat the moment it made contact, sending sand and sparks flying like shrapnel. But Morgan didn't stop. The explosions lit her silhouette in strobe-like flashes. She ignored the flames, keeping her head low, her blade tight in her hands, and charged straight through the fire ravens without caring about the damage. She had used another enchantment she had absorbed from her memory, granting her high resistance to fire attacks. Then she used another that gave her resistance to elemental attacks, and yet another that made her body more adaptable to her environment, rendering Medici's flames insignificant. Morgan's sword glowed in a bizarre manner, as if absorbing the light itself. Light coiled along its length, brightening with a pale, gentle glow until it blazed with the fiery radiance of the day. In the span of a heartbeat, she thrust it forward, and the blade unleashed a blinding white beam that ripped through the air, aimed at Medici's face. But before the beam could reach him, a fire raven shrieked into its path. The collision caused the beam to change its trajectory, striking the arena and detonating in a violent, white flash, leaving only a crater behind as the shockwave sent sand flying high into the air. Morgan blinked at the interception, but she didn't falter. After all, who said Morgan wanted the beam to hit? It was only a distraction to hide her real attack. The moment the explosion faded, she was already there, closing the distance with impressive speed gained from another enchantment. Her sword carved a wide, horizontal arc toward Medici's abdomen. But Medici, sensing the attack with his hunter's instincts, lowered his arm and deflected the blade with a strike from his gauntleted fist. Morgan's brow furrowed. She didn't like her strike being blocked, but she didn't slow down. Instead, she pursued him with even more determination. The two exchanged numerous attacks, each one precise and brutal. But Morgan's fighting style was far more graceful than Medici's, who fought like a lunatic. Summoning his shield, he dashed forward without hesitation, laughing, and slammed the dusk shard against her body, pushing her back. But Morgan quickly composed herself, using her superior speed to get behind him and slash his back. She was like a living sword. No, she was exactly that, the sharpest sword that ever existed. Medici's seemingly invincible defense, granted by the underworld's armament, was finally broken. Not to mention, Morgan used a very special enchantment this time to make sure that Bastard would bleed to death. A geyser of blood gushed from the wound, painting the yellow sand crimson. And not just the sand, Morgan's face was soaked as well, blood drenching her body and clothes. As Medici struggled to control his muscles and somehow slow the bleeding, he noticed the look in her eyes. It was the same expression, the same eyes, the same twisted grin he had seen in his own reflection on the golden armor of Gunlog after being pierced by his spear. Seeing this, he felt his blood boil with ecstasy and elation, laughing wildly as he clutched his head, hidden beneath his helmet. Then, boom! A roaring wave of flames erupted from Medici, consuming everything around him, including himself. The helmet shattered in the blast, molten lines of fire racing across his form like glowing veins. His armor began to melt, fusing with his skin, while half of his face, including his hair, was burned away. It was as if he willingly sacrificed his own body, burning himself alive to drown her in the same searing hell. But Morgan, fortunately, had another enchantment she had absorbed that allowed her to teleport short distances. Using it, she quickly escaped the destruction. Medici continued laughing, though his expression was now filled with rage, his form consumed by blazing inferno. He held his flaming spear with a certain arrogance that made him beautiful, despite his scorched and horrific state. Morgan's smile widened, finding his courage admirable even though she was almost injured. Morgan reacted on instinct, burning her essence to fuel another enchantment. Her boots skidded across the sand as she hurled herself backward, arms rising. The enchantment she had torn from her memory surged through her bloodstream, cold and sharp. She felt a faint pulse as she looked up at the blazing golden flames advancing toward her and smiled. Water exploded from her palms in spiraling torrents, unfurling into a massive wave that surged outward with explosive force. It collided with Medici's flames midair and devoured them. Fire hissed and sputtered, clawing desperately against the overwhelming surge, but the water crushed it flat, the clash erupting into plumes of steam that billowed like storm clouds. But Medici did not stop. Two flaming serpents burst forth, coiling around each other as they shot toward the incoming tide. Their jaws snapped, trails of fire whipping behind them as they slammed into the wave, instantly erupting into towering walls of flame, attempting to partition the water and slow its advance. For a moment, the arena became a battlefield of opposing elements, water and fire clashing for dominance. Then Medici exhaled sharply and clenched his fists. The walls of flame hardened. The fire crystallized, line by line, folding inward until it solidified into gleaming steel. An immense, jagged barricade formed in the path of the water, resembling a triangular pyramid but only half-built, designed to intercept the attack and split the wave so Medici could avoid its full force. Water crashed against the steel construct, geysers erupting before splitting apart, rushing in different directions, one to the right, another to the left, leaving Medici unharmed in the center. Medici didn't hesitate. He vanished into the thick, swirling steam, letting it cloak him like a shadow, and used every ounce of his hunter's instinct to strike at Morgan before she could react. But Morgan was no ordinary target. Her senses were even more heightened than his, amplified now by another enchantment. She opened her vibrant, vermilion eyes, now tinged with a hint of gray, and went completely white in focus, observing the entire battlefield and spotting Medici's silhouette rapidly advancing while holding his blazing spear. White sparks flickered across her back. They solidified, folding and stretching until they became delicate, radiant blue wings, butterfly-like in shape. With a powerful flap, she rose above the battlefield, avoiding the flaming spear Medici hurled with lethal precision. The weapon detonated where she had been a heartbeat before, painting the arena in molten orange sparks. From her elevated vantage, Morgan's gaze swept across the arena, cold and calculating. In one fluid motion, she summoned her weapon, Morgan's warbow, too massive to be wielded by any ordinary human. She burned almost half of her essence, leaving only a 30% for emergencies, and drew forth a single arrow, glowing bright yellow as if it had trapped a bolt of lightning within its core. She knocked it with ease, closing her left eye and channeling all her senses into the tiniest detail. The bow was monstrous in size, the string resisting her pull with the weight of solid steel, yet her awakened abilities made her superhuman, her body resilient and powerful like tempered steel. What would be impossible for anyone else was effortless for her. The string pulled taut, the arrow quivering with kinetic energy. Her wings beat steadily as she held herself aloft, her body coiled like a spring, senses sharpened to a razor's edge, ready to unleash a strike that could turn the tide of battle. Medici, hidden in the mist below, had no idea the literal storm he was about to face. The moment came. Morgan's fingers loosened, and the arrow launched. Arrows sliced through steam, smoke, and chaos, it cut in a perfect, unbroken line. The air itself seemed to bend around it, pressure crackling, forcing the arrow onward faster than any ordinary projectile could hope to travel. Medici's instinct screamed at him before his eyes could fully register the threat. He gritted his teeth and reacted instinctively. A swarm of fire ravens burst from his hands, raking toward the arrow, while a wall of flames erupted beneath, forming what he thought would be an unbreachable shield. With a snap of his fingers, the fire solidified into steel, gleaming and impenetrable, the perfect conductor for the lightning bolt he assumed would discharge upon impact. But the arrow ignored them all. The fire ravens disintegrated in flashes of white light as if they were nothing more than smoke, and the steel wall groaned and split as the arrow tore through it. Medici stopped, his eyebrow raised as he looked up. He had miscalculated. He had misunderstood how the arrow's enchantment worked. The lightning didn't react to the wall, nor did it react to the arrow's impact. Because it wasn't autonomous. Morgan was the one deciding when the bolt of lightning trapped in the arrow would be released from its shackles. Medici grinned, and instinctively deactivated the galvanization in his body, willing his flesh to turn to stone and creating a brittle, earthen barrier to prevent the lightning from using his previously iron-like body as a conduit. But unfortunately, he wasn't faster than lightning. The bolt struck, and a blinding flash ripped across the arena, followed by a thunderous roar that shattered eardrums and rattled sand across the ground. The force of it was like being caught inside a collapsing sky. Medici's vision blurred instantly, black spots racing across his eyes. What remained of his onyx armor groaned under the assault, cracks spider-webbed across its surface, some pieces exploding outward in molten sparks. He had prepared as best he could, but nothing could make him entirely immune to a strike like that. Heat seared across his body. Sweat vaporized as electricity branched beneath his stony skin, crackling like molten veins. If he hadn't hardened his body in time, if even a fraction of a second had faltered, the lightning would have stopped his heart, or paralyzed the centers in his brain that controlled breathing. Death would have come faster than thought. Yet, he survived. He staggered, limbs trembling, lungs burning as he forced himself to remain upright. The arena smelled of ozone and scorched earth. His instincts, honed through countless battles, had carried him through, and his battle IQ had allowed him to understand the danger before it became fatal. His entire body was scorched and blackened from the attack, his crimson hair gone, leaving behind burned skin on his head, while half of his face was destroyed, the bone of his jaw and teeth visibly exposed. Meanwhile, Morgan had already loosed another arrow, her intent clear: finish the fight. But it vanished mid-flight. A cold yet strangely gentle voice echoed across the arena, cutting through the tension like a knife. Theft. Eamon, walking back from his meeting with Ki Song, glanced at the arena, his crystal monocle gleaming with an unsettling luster. His face was straight and expressionless as he held the arrow Morgan had just released in his left hand, while his right hand rested on his cane. "I think that is enough, my lady," he said in a neutral tone, then added, "Winner, Morgan of Valor. Let's pretend nothing happened yesterday. Are you really fine?" Morgan asked with a tired sigh, leaning back in her seat. Night had already settled over Swindler's trick, and the two of them sat in Achu's cafe. Despite Achu's questionable fighting style, his desserts and coffee were something to behold. "Yeah, I am. Luna healed me, so I'm as good as new," Medici replied between bites of pancakes, wearing a satisfied smile, as if nothing life-threatening had happened just a few hours ago. Then he paused mid-chew, looked up at her, and smirked. "Though, I never thought you would lose to Achu, hey?" Morgan grimaced immediately. Her eyes slid toward Ah Chu, who sat nearby with a bored expression, legs on the table and reading a book. A book that had a very questionable cover. It was a naked woman in some absurd, anatomically impossible pose, which made Morgan's face twist in visible discomfort. Yes, it was quite a disturbing experience. Morgan muttered, disgust settling into her expression as she remembered the last fight in the arena. Deeply disturbing, actually. Meanwhile, Ah Chu just turned a page, continuing to read his book. Then, he suddenly covered his mouth dramatically, like a fair maiden seeing something shocking, and giggled. Medici chuckled, stabbing another piece of pancake. From what I've heard, fighters are traumatized. Seriously, what happened? Why is no one talking about it? Morgan shuddered, almost flinching at his words. Sighing, she wiped the sweat from her forehead and sank into her seat with a helpless look. If she had nightmares tonight, she knew exactly who to blame. And it wasn't Medici. Every fighter who had won their duels was gathered in the arena now, watching one another with guarded hostility. Morgan stood among them, arms crossed and wearing a nonchalant look. After all, most of those fighters were awakens. There was no way any of them could beat her. Or so she thought. Because the next second, the gates creaked open, and Ah Chu stepped out, strolling forward with a creepy smile on his face. Every fighter froze, staring at Ah Chu in disbelief, as if he were some kind of unholy beast. Their blood ran cold, and they stepped back in horror. Morgan tilted her head, confused by their reactions, but chose to observe for now. In the sky, a dot appeared, slowly growing in size until everyone could make out the silhouette of a man they all knew. It was the Nightingale, famous localist and member of the Bug, Kai. Sheet. It's him. Wait, is what I'm thinking really going to happen? Holy shit. It's really Ah Chu's theme song. Then Kai's voice rang across the arena as the entire audience erupted into roars, hyped up for the upcoming bloodbath, or green fog. Now I'm like, shit, I hopped out so quick, then I raised my blick. And I don't miss, I let off 2 shots, I hit him in his shit. Now, Vaughn, think quick. I see, I don't understand a thing, Morgan thought, her face blank as she wondered what the heck was wrong with these people. But when she looked back at Ah Chu, Morgan froze. For some reason, Ah Chu felt intimidating. He's just a pathetic trickster, someone who can only win with dirty tricks. This doesn't make sense, she thought, gritting her teeth. Ah Chu's grin widened as he cracked his knuckles in slow motion. Seeing him, one fighter instantly ran back, another fainted from shock, and a third dropped to his knees, whispering with a look of despair. This is worse than death. Meanwhile, the commentators finally decided to speak, to make the fight more interesting. Alright. Time for the another pointless bloody tournament. Gunlog announced through his sound-amplifying memory, yawning. Then came the loud glug 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 of him drinking, because, of course, he was already at it. Aiko chimed in with a bright smile, holding the memory close as she overlooked the arena. This is the moment of truth, my friends. Will Ah Chu, Demon King of Backfiring, remain undefeated, or will we witness the birth of a new champion? Absolute waste of money, Dream Realm tournament bullshit is finally beginning. Gunlog nodded, leaning back with a grin. Despite his rude way of speaking, he still had fans. Yes, it's shocking, but at this point, no one should be surprised. Note: all the fans were teenage girls. Aiko ignored him entirely, continuing with adorable giggles. Now remember, folks, this battle isn't about who's the strongest, but about who wins. In this battle, even the weakest might become champion. It's a reflection of how harsh the Dream Realm truly is. How adaptability, quick thinking, and versatility matter more than raw power. Many powerful awakens have died here, and many weak ones endured. Gunlog slammed his cup down after emptying it. I wanna see a dirty fight. No handshakes, no honorable duels, no long speeches about courting death, and no musical numbers. Kai, shut up. Ah, why? Kai called back, still floating above the arena, pouting with a saddened look. And if any of you touch my little boy, Gunlog snarled, using his aura of drunken, laughing storm. I will fucking annihilate you. I have the power of an author and hentai on my side. He said it with such conviction that the audience collectively leaned back. And oh, killing is not permitted, Aiko added with a soft smile, sipping her juice, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. But I will kill you if you touch even a single hair on my son's head, Gunlog added casually, his voice strangely calm and composed, making the fighters finally relax and focus on upcoming battle. And don't forget, have fun. Aiko clapped lightly, her cheerful tone making the whole threat situation feel even stranger. Gunlog leaned forward, gulping down another bottle of beer, then shouted into the sound-amplifying memory. And I fucking see the future. I know how overpowered I'll be. Future me is busted as fuck, so don't forget my words, punks. Then he blinked, staring at the arena and then at his bottle, nodding to himself. He emptied it and said, his voice softer, oh. And good luck, my boy. I love you. Make sure not to let your guard down, look after your essence, and beat them all. And also, don't forget to. Okay, fine. I get it, fucker. Achu shouted from the arena floor, rubbing the bridge of his nose in frustration as he groaned. Then he sighed, shoulders dropping, and muttered under his breath, I love you too. Raw agghhhhh. My boy loves me. Gunlog roared, his voice cracking like he'd just achieved enlightenment through alcoholism. He grabbed tiny Aiko by the shoulders and shook her so wildly she nearly rattled out of her own skeleton. Did you see that, Aiko? Did you hear that? My son loves me back. Aiko felt disoriented from all the shaking, her tiny, weak bones threatening to shatter as she muttered, I see. Morgan, watching all of this, remained motionless, her face straight and expressionless. The only thought she managed to form was, what in actual fuck? At the same time, every fighter in the arena suddenly bolted backward, scrambling toward the gates and punching them as if their lives depended on it. Panic rippled through the arena as a deranged grin spread across Achu's face. Morgan snapped out of her thoughts as she took in the bizarre scene unfolding before her very eyes. Awakened warriors, those battle-hardened killers, were running from him. But why? Her answer came instantly. A horrifying, guttural sound echoed across the arena. It was deep, distorted, and vibrating through the very air. Achu doubled over, eyes squeezed shut, muscles locked in agony. His fists clenched so hard that his skin turned pale. He gritted his teeth as if he were fighting off some ancient evil spirit. Morgan tilted her head, looking at Achu and then at the cowardly warriors who couldn't even face this clown. This is ridiculous, nothing makes sense here, she thought, shaking her head in disappointment. Oh, little did she knew. Prrrrttrtrtrtrtrtr. A dreadful sound escaped from Achu, and a greenish-orange fog blasted outward, engulfing the entire arena. Morgan remained perfectly still, literally. She wasn't even breathing, because doing so would be fatal. Inhaling that fog was as deadly as the swords his father forged. Oh shit. He used EU, that's disgusting. Run, fuckers, run. No 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 no. Blearg. What was supposed to be a fight instantly devolved into a massacre. Meanwhile, Achu slowly straightened up. His tense expression softened, his face slackened into the most serene, relieved grin imaginable, as if he had just achieved spiritual enlightenment through pure gastrointestinal destruction. EU, that's disgusting was no ordinary technique. It was an awakened ability of Achu, infamous for its absurd and catastrophic power. The fog it created was poisonous in a way no one could resist. Simply put, it was an exceptional ability capable of wiping out anyone in sight, regardless of rank. Achu glanced back at his opponents, bent forward again, and unleashed another barrage. His stance widened with unnatural precision. In that moment, he was not a man, he was a biological machine gun, firing with ruthless, merciless eyes after he sneezed. Ah! Chew! Rakatakatakatakataka. The gas consumed the arena, swallowing fighters left and right. One by one, they collapsed, twitching, gagging, drowning in the vile haze until all movement ceased. When the smoke finally thinned enough for the audience to see what was happening, they were met with a sight straight out of a nightmare. Every fighter lay defeated, completely and utterly crushed, their bodies sprawled across the arena floor and covered in their own vomit. Only one remained standing, the man, the legend, the one and only demon king of backfiring, Achu. So that's what happened, damn, now I'm glad you smoked me, Medici muttered, a shiver crawling up his spine as Morgan finished recounting the tale. Her expression was twisted with disgust, her vibrant vermilion eyes glaring at Ah Chu with such lethal intensity that Medici half expected her to leap across the cafe and stab him with a teaspoon. But the fact remained. Ah Chu was the demon king of backfiring. Yes, it was enlightening, Morgan said through clenched teeth. An experience that ended with me spending hours in the bath, scrubbing myself without stop. She glanced at Ah Chu again with clear hatred and spite. The little bastard did not care about her hostility at all. He sat there giggling, legs swinging, nose buried in a smut novel while Gunlog sat beside him, grinning in the same unsettling, creepy way. As for Medici, he was genuinely happy he had lost. Normally, losing a fight irritated him to no end, but this time. No, they could take the victory. He didn't care in the slightest. He was simply grateful he had avoided that nightmare. Honestly, even second nightmare would have been less traumatizing than what Morgan described. Gods, I'm glad I was struck by lightning. At least I lost with dignity. The demon king of backfiring just giggled at his book, completely oblivious to the fear, hatred, and trauma accumulating around him. In a way, he was like his uncles and dad. He was feared as well, but for entirely different reasons. Fine, forget about that. What do you think about this place in general? Medici asked with genuine curiosity, leaning back in his seat. While he was proud of what Aemon had built, he still wanted to hear the opinion of a princess who was the heir of Bastion. Morgan frowned slightly, her eyes lowering to her tea. For a moment she simply stared into the cup, her expression unreadable and a little odd, as if she didn't know how to answer. For once she wanted to be honest about her feelings, but she was still a princess of war. And she knew well what happened when you placed too much trust in someone. So she answered dismissively. I think, it's not bad, she murmured before taking a sip. Medici groaned, pulling at his newly restored crimson hair in frustration. On that note, his hair seemed more majestic than before. Now that he thought about it, he didn't even need to wash it anymore, and the same applied to his body. Why would he bother bathing when he could just ask Luna for new life and in an instant he was as good as new? The thought brought a satisfied smile to his face, but he quickly shook his head, snapping out of his strange train of thought and focusing on Morgan again. Such an obvious lie, at least put some effort into it. And it is just the two of us here, so be honest, it will not kill you. Morgan raised an eyebrow playfully, a faint smile tugging at her lips. And why should I? It is not like we are close. Medici nodded automatically. Fair. Then, he paused, staring at her with a slightly confused expression. Huh, aren't we, friends, though? Morgan nearly choked. She set her cup down a bit too forcefully, grabbed a napkin, and wiped her mouth, looking at him as if he had just confessed he was secretly a blasphemer in disguise. She was even waiting for him to put a monocle on his right eye. Listen here, you told me to get a broom and that I belong in the kitchen. Do you seriously think I consider you a friend? She asked in bewilderment. What was wrong with these people? Not to mention, friends are useless, Mr. Medici. I will teach you this. There is no such thing as selfless friendship. Every person who approached me did so because of my status as princess. They used me and I used them, it was nothing but a transaction in acting. Sure. Medici nodded with an unimpressed look, crossing his arms. Let's agree to disagree. If friends were so useless, then I wouldn't be here. I would have died in that arena, is that not true? Morgan frowned, her eyes dimming from old memories. Sure, Aemon had saved Medici from her arrow, but who could say he hadn't done it because Medici was useful? Now that she thought about it, how did that arrow vanish? Amon's aspect ability was hypnosis. Maybe it was an awakened ability. Her mind had been messy back then, all she could think about was killing Medici. Did he influence her mind in some way? Or was the arrow nothing but an illusion? Perhaps it had been a memory with some kind of magnetic ability that attracted her arrow. She didn't know, another mystery added to the list. Sighing, she composed herself and shifted in her seat, ready to prove her opinion was correct, but before she could speak, Medici continued talking, gesturing at the street, the temple, the arena, the crimson spire, the forest and fields, the harbor, and the coin he was holding. I mean, look at this place. Really look at it. The coin here is called Luna. Do you think that is a coincidence? It is kind of funny now that I think about it. That idiot literally turned the entire economy into a love letter. Morgan stared at the coin. Its design was horrifying, if she was honest, but somehow it was still unique and beautiful. Was this some kind of hint? What did this coin represent? It was crystal clear that it was related to Princess Luna, but there had to be a deeper meaning to it. From the reports and her sister's words, Blasphemer liked to play games. He liked to leave hints behind, as if foreshadowing events in his plans. Another mystery. Wait, why did she feel like this had already happened? Still, it was romantic, Morgan could admit that. Too romantic and sweet, in fact. She even felt a bit envious of Luna for some reason. And do you know the name of the arena we fought in? Medici interrupted her thought process. She exhaled slowly, feeling annoyed. I do not. It's called Endless Hunt. Eamon named it after me because he knows I love fighting. So if it is as you said, that friendship is nothing but a transaction, why would my friend bother to do all of this? Build things in his friends' names. Even the entertainment district is called Gambler's Bliss. It is named after Gunnlaug and Aiko, Medici said with a proud grin, leaning back in his seat with a hint of arrogance. Morgan's eyes widened for a moment, but she quickly hid her surprise and feigned indifference. She didn't really know how to answer this. The cynical part of her still whispered that everything was just a deliberate act from Eamon, designed to make him appear in a favorable light, but another part of her, the part that longed for genuine connection, told her that not everything was meaningless or fake, that some things had purpose and meaning, even if it was hard to comprehend. I don't know, she admitted reluctantly. Medici nodded with a sigh, feeling a bit melancholic. Even I don't really know. Eamon rarely talks about things like that. Maybe it's because he wants to feel our presence, even when we're not with him. Morgan looked down, at a loss for words. Skepticism clung stubbornly to her, the product of a life in which genuine connections were nothing but beautiful lies. Her father had been nothing but an empty, emotionless man obsessed with perfection. Her mother was dead, and her brother a beast locked away. Her uncle wasn't as bad, but he was a saint with incredible strength and just as distant. The elders in her clan were obsessed with the benefits of the clan, while Saint Jest was always cryptic and unsettling. It was hard to imagine what Medici described when warmth was absent from your life, when you couldn't even touch another person in fear of shredding them to pieces. Medici smiled faintly, his expression bright with the joy of having spent time with his idiotic friends. Well, he was just as stupid as they were. Or maybe they all became stupid when they were together. There was some kind of connection there, something he felt as a conspirer. He shook his head with an amused smile and glanced at her. I mean, memories with the right people will always be priceless. And every moment with my friends feels timeless. It is hard to explain. Time isn't something I am familiar with, unlike a certain prankster. But from what I can see, every second with them is too short. It will never feel like enough. He tilted his head toward the starless sky of the forgotten shore, his expression turning thoughtful. Really, it is funny. Luna and Eamon are like stars in this starless sky. I can't always see them, but I know they're there. When I fought you, I couldn't see Eamon, but he was there, protecting me from your arrow. And Luna was there healing my injuries. We are never truly apart. Maybe in distance, but never in heart. He shrugged. So no, I cannot agree with you. I would rather walk in the dark with my friends than stand alone in the light. They're all I have. So, what's up, gang? Hope you're all doing well. These chapters are mostly slice of life before the second nightmare begins. What do you think about them? Are they good or not? We explored a bit of Morgan here. NGL, instead of a demoness, Medici might end up with her. The second nightmare will start soon, probably a few chapters later, most likely after Moira is explored. Think of it like a party before the storm. My boy Medici is a bro and always was. Seriously, I love those three idiots. Lol, Medici even decided to use Luna's new life as a cleaner too. And don't forget our glorious king, Ah Chu. He's the one and only demon king of backfiring. That's it for now, gang. See you later and enjoy the meal. And that is why I am known as the throat goat. Gunnlaug slammed his cup on the table with complete conviction, his arm draped over Sunny's shoulder. Sunny nodded awkwardly, still unsure what to do with him. I see. If Sunny was honest, he still didn't know how to react to these new versions of his former enemies. First there was Haru's, who was a gentleman. He wasn't sure. Haru's often visited his mother when she was taking care of Rain's younger siblings whenever their parents were absent. From what Sunny heard from Rain, Haru's was soft-spoken and calm around children. He often played with them and let them do whatever they wanted, saying that kids should enjoy their childhood without someone constantly telling them what to do and killing their excitement and innocence. That surprised Sunny a great deal. But perhaps Haru's spoke from experience. Another matter was Amon. He saved Rain. Sunny still had no idea how to handle that information. And the fact that Rain was Amon's fan made him even more conflicted. Thankfully she wasn't in love or anything ridiculous like that. It was simple admiration, and Sunny was grateful it didn't go any further. What truly depressed him, though, was that Rain liked Gunlock. How? Why would anyone like this idiot who was currently sitting beside him, drunk as hell, talking to him as if they were old friends? Sunny was baffled. Then there was Castor. Sunny expected him to assassinate Neffys, but nothing happened. Castor didn't even look at her, as if he had thrown his mission into a fire and decided to warm his hands instead. Kido was, honestly, Sunny had no complaints about her. She was the reason people didn't starve in the Forgotten Shore. Another thing that bothered him was Aiko. The shameless girl was scamming people, and even Sunny was scammed, embarrassingly. He only realized it after his shadow noticed her joyful expression when she believed no one was watching. And then there was Kai. Sunny enjoyed talking to him. He was funny, and his flaw made their conversations even more entertaining and ridiculous. Listen, boy, I know being short is depressing and all, but don't be so gloomy all the time. I think some women like feminine and soft guys like you. Gunlock grunted, clearly displeased with Sunny's serious behavior. Pardon. Sunny remained motionless, his onyx eyes hiding his exasperation. Thanks, I guess. He exhaled softly, his thoughts drifting back to his friends. Neffys was in the Valor clan now, and Cassie was with her. Effie remained neutral and was currently living in his house. Neffys had changed, Sunny could admit that. She wasn't as intense as she used to be, while Cassie had grown noticeably more confident. Sunny himself had changed too, or so he believed. He was still spiteful and petty, but he was trying to be better. Spite was useful, but he no longer allowed it to cloud his judgment. His loss against Amon had been an enlightening experience, let's say. It showed him that, at times, his strength was not enough and his own behavior could easily turn against him. Not to mention, if he had stayed the way he used to be, obsessively determined to kill Amon, then Rain would have died. Amon saved her, and Sunny hadn't been there. If Sunny had succeeded in killing him back in the Forgotten Shore, then what would have happened to Rain? She would have died without shadow of doubt. That thought alone gave him plenty to consider, so he decided to change for the better, little by little. It wasn't easy, but at least he was trying. Thinking about the past made him realize how right Luna had been and how senseless they all were back then. Well, they were children who had found themselves in a living hell, so it wasn't surprising that many of them simply broke. Even so, he still disliked Amon. That bastard had traumatized him. It was embarrassing to admit, but Sunny was afraid of Amon. However, he also found himself thinking about Amon's words, and about what others had said as well. Was his approach to life truly wrong? Once he asked himself that question, he realized that it indeed was. He began to understand Amon's perspective too. Shadows were shapeless and could take any shape. Sunny would have been ashamed if he couldn't even understand the shapes of others. This led to another question. How would he react if someone abandoned Neffys to die? Or worse, Rain, just as he had abandoned Luna? He tried to argue with himself and insisted that he would remain reasonable. But Sunny was an honest man, the most honest in two worlds. So the answer he came up with was simple. He would have done worse than Amon, far worse. He shook his head, a deep sigh escaping his lips as he took a sip of juice. Looking around, he was still stunned by the sight. The Forgotten Shore had changed beyond recognition. The Dark City was gone, burned to the ground by Amon, and from its ashes Moirai had been born. I still cannot believe I lost, he shuddered, remembering the arena and how he had been defeated by Gunlock's son. That had been an unexpected situation indeed. Who could have thought something so disgusting could be so lethal? He had almost choked to death. Hey, you just got achute, that's all. Gunlock grinned as he gulped down his wine. Sunny grimaced, licked his lips, and turned back to his drink, deciding to at least enjoy the apple juice. Hey, Gunlock, what are you? Oh, Sunny. What a surprise. Luna exclaimed when she noticed Gunlock and Sunny drinking together. It was a strange sight to behold. "Hello, Luna," Sunny greeted awkwardly, feeling a twinge of guilt over how he had treated her in the past, whether through his cynical words or during their confrontation. Luna laughed and slapped his back with a cheerful smile. "Don't worry about the past. It is part of what makes us who we are today, but it isn't our present or something we should fear in the future." Sunny nodded with a small smile. "Thanks, are you sure you should be running around like that?" He pointed at her belly. It was strange seeing a pregnant woman so unbothered by it. "Yes, it's nothing for me." Luna nodded with confidence, sat down beside him, and raised her hand. "Haruz, can you make 3 big shawarmas? With tomatoes and no onions. Also add some pepper." "I refuse." Haruz shook his head. "I have to take care of my nephew's health since his irresponsible parents don't care." His tone was serious. "Everything for my nephews, I have to protect them," he thought, thinking about Achu and now Evangelo. "Ah, come on. I already said it is nothing. I can protect the baby with my abilities. He will be the healthiest." Luna glared at him, irritation rising, only for Haruz to throw cucumbers at her. "You are only allowed to eat vegetables and fruits at night," he said. His bleak eyes were menacing and cold. "And what if I don't?" Luna stood up, huffing. "What? Nothing. You will simply be banned from my restaurant." Haruz blinked and stated it plainly. Luna's eyes widened in disbelief. Her body trembled and she slowly sat down, chewing cucumbers with a pitiful expression. Haruz nodded in satisfaction, finished Sunny's shawarma, and handed it to him. Sunny accepted it with a strange look, still baffled that his old enemy was serving him food. "I hope you enjoy it," Haruz said simply. He crossed his arms and returned to the kitchen, muttering something about teaching Evangelo how to cook. "Hee, you're so awkward, Sunny. Like frightened bunny. It's actually quite adorable." Luna giggled softly as she patted his shoulder. "That's what I am saying. A true bond is created by beating each other. Look at us. Haruz, the boss and Medici nearly killed each other, and now we are friends, so what is his problem?" Gunlog muttered while leaning back in his chair. "Oh, shut up. Not everyone is like you weirdos." Luna shouted at Gunlog, defending Sunny. Deep down, she still wanted to restore her friendship with others. "How come you guys don't hate me?" Sunny finally asked, genuinely intrigued by their behavior and by what they thought. Well, if people hate for no reason, then why not become someone who loves for no reason?" Luna said with a warm smile. "That's why I love you. Even if you are forcing nightmare creatures to reproduce endlessly and turning them into potions." A gentle voice was heard from behind. A young man with a crystal monocle on his right eye wrapped his arms around Luna's neck and kissed her cheek. Then he glanced at Sunny and offered his hand. Sunny shook it awkwardly. "As for your question, Sunless, every person will have a different answer." Sunny nodded, understanding that everyone had a different approach to life. Then, with genuine curiosity, he asked, "Then, what is life?" Luna touched her chin and thought for a moment before answering thoughtfully. "Life is love, of course. Without love, what is the point of living? Perhaps each person loves differently. There might be those who love killing and destruction and those who love peace in the world. But the point remains that love is vital for existence. It brings color to a bleak life. Life, I think, is pleasure. It is doing whatever a person wants without restraint. I do what I want. I kill, I eat, I drink, I have fun, I sail across the dark sea or stay here to cheer for my son. At the end of the day, my life is nothing but fulfilling my desires." Gunlog replied with a yawn, not really taking things seriously. Or at least that was how it appeared. His eyes carried a faint hint of regret, and a determination to live without one. Life is struggle. Every time a person wakes up, even the most successful and joyful, they will face struggle. It is our nature to face those challenges and overcome them. It is an endless cycle where the human is the challenger and life is the challenge. Haruz said calmly from the kitchen. Then they glanced at Eamon. He remained still for a few seconds before a soft smile appeared on his face. Life is life. There is no deeper meaning to it, just as there is no meaning to the existence of bacteria, for example. But while it is meaningless, it also means that every individual can forge their own meaning. Possibilities are endless in this ridiculous, absurd life. Sunny nodded, but then his expression darkened. He clenched his fists as he looked down, feeling bitter. Then what's the point of all of that if our fates are already determined? If we have no choice. Eamon sighed. Fate was making Sunny's life a living hell. He knew this and was no longer his past self who judged others easily. How could he be, having realized that he was as imperfect as everyone else? As for Sunny's question, it was difficult to answer. Fate was cruel and sometimes merciful, but it still caused misfortune at some point in everyone's life. Thinking like this, a gentle smile appeared on Amon's face as he spoke. You cannot add days to your life, Sunless. Time is even more cruel than fate. But it also gives you the opportunity to add life to your days. The destination may already be written, but I do not think the journey is. Fate may be ruthless, but destiny is not. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. And, the only person you are destined to become is who you choose to be. His dark eyes shifted for a moment, replaced with a different golden light, like a stardust. That is my gift. Sunny nodded but then frowned, glancing at him as his eyes returned to normal. Your gift. Eamon blinked, snapping out of whatever trance he had been in. My what? You said it is your gift, what do you mean? Sunny confirmed, his expression growing confused. I see, forget it. I wanted to say the gift of destiny and instead said something else, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Sunny nodded, still curious about his words. Destiny and fate. Fate is the destination while destiny is what guides it, huh? Well, I promised you guys that Sunny would change and grow, so here it is. I may have forgotten about him for a while, but don't blame me for that, XDD. Anyway, we have this conversation between our characters, and something happened to Eamon. Curious what it is. I'm sure you guys can figure it out. Also, after this volume, I might take a long break. I don't want to mess up the second nightmare by writing almost every day. I need to plan how it will go. Lastly, what do you think about how the second nightmare should unfold? Should it happen when the 7 heroes have already built the spire, or during the dark times when the sun did not exist and the 7 heroes were young? If you have any advice, I'd happily take it. Oh, and, check Shadow Slave, Hollow Knight. Its author is meme_stealer. There's only one chapter for now but it's pretty good. That's it for now. Enjoy, guys, and love you. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.